What if Jon Snow was never Ned Stark's greatest secret, but the Mad King's last living son? What if the blood running through the bastard of Winterfell wasn't just Stark blood, but the same blood that once burned kingdoms, shattered dynasties, and drove Aerys Targaryen into madness? Because if Jon is the son of Aerys II, then he isn't just a hidden heir, he is a nightmare buried under snow. A prince born from fire and madness, raised among wolves, while the realm has no idea what is waiting in the north. And the moment that truth comes out, everything changes. The Iron Throne is thrown into chaos. The Targaryen legacy becomes darker than anyone imagined. And Jon Snow is no longer the lost son of honor, but the last son of madness itself. This is the story of what if Jon Snow was the bastard son of Mad King Aerys, the second Targaryen. Subscribe if you are new on this channel. Also, if you love the Game of Thrones theories and what ifs, please let me know in comment box. Also, if you have any story suggestions, feel free to write below. Now let's start.
The morning after the last pyre burned low, Jon Snow stood on the broken wall of Winterfell and watched the smoke lift off the fields. The long night was ended, and already the men below him were arguing about the price of bread. He found that an odd mercy. The dead had been lying 3 days, and still the world insisted on shape, carts, hammers, kettles, complaints, as if the living had always been a little astonished at themselves and needed routine to remember how to be. His hands were cold inside his gloves. Ghost lay behind him in the snow, an arrow-torn ear laid flat and one forepaw tucked under his chest, a patience that was not sleep. The direwolf had been shy of Jon since the battle. Jon did not hold it against him. He had not been easy to be near in the fighting or since. There had been a moment at the end when something had taken him, not a man's anger but something older, rushing up through his throat, and Ghost had felt it and recoiled. Only for an instant. Jon had seen the wolf's red eye go wide, the way a dog looks when a kind master kicks him for the first time. He had looked at that eye and gone back to being a man. Behind him, booted feet crunched snow. "Sam says you've been up here since before the bells," Tormund said. The big wildling stopped at his shoulder, breathing into his beard. "He also says you've eaten nothing, which I could have told him, for I've seen you since the wall fell, and you only eat when a woman puts a bowl in your hand, and sometimes not even then. I am not hungry. That's what dead men say. It's why they stay dead." Jon's mouth twitched, which was as much as he could manage. "I'll come down." "I don't want you down, I want you to eat." Tormund pressed a cloth bundle against his chest. Warm bread. Jon took it to have something in his hands. Tormund looked out at the field. "We burned the last of them before dawn. Giants took 3 hours. 2 pyres for the White Walker, not even ash. Like burning wet smoke it was." He glanced sidelong at Jon. "The little lord called for you. Bran, your brother, he said to come when you were ready." Tormund paused with that unaccustomed care he had lately shown, a bear learning to step around dropped babies. He said it like a man who means whenever, not so soon you run. "Thank you, Tormund." The wildling grunted, thumped him on the shoulder with a force that would have rocked a smaller man, and left. Ghost rose, and the two of them went down the wall stairs together, the white wolf quiet on the steps, Jon eating bread because he had been told to. The godswood, after a battle, was the loneliest place in Westeros. The weirwood stood in its pool with its pale hands full of red leaves, the old face carved into its trunk watching with a weeping calm. Bran waited in his wheeled chair beneath the tree, a fur across his knees, mirror reed nowhere to be seen. He had been alone here more and more, and Jon did not know whether to be glad or sad for it. "You called for me." "I did." Bran's voice was no stranger to Jon now, but it had not stopped unsettling him. It was a winter voice, a clear pool on a flat day. "Sit, if you like." Jon sat on the root. Ghost paced twice around the pool and settled on its far side, watching them across the black water. The leaves above moved without wind. "You have not slept well," Bran said. "No, neither have I." Jon studied him. There was no pity in Bran's eyes, nor condescension, nor any of the other failures that came so easily when you had a brother who could not walk. "You told me," Jon said, "about Rhaegar. I told you what I saw, what I had been given to see." A silence that was not quite hesitation. There was more. Jon waited because he had learned that rushing Bran made him slower, not faster. "The tower," Bran said. "The Tower of Joy. Father came to it on horseback at first light. 7 men of the Kingsguard had been there. 3 remained. They fought. Father and Howland Reed lived." He said it like a chronicler, except that behind each word was a weight that suggested he was choosing each one. "Lyanna died in blood in a bed upstairs. You were born in that bed." "I know this," Jon said, and his throat hurt. "You do not." Jon kept his eyes on him. "I saw Rhaegar in another tree," Bran said. "At Summerhall when he was a boy, and I saw him on the Trident. I saw the ruby fly into the river. I watched him die, but I did not see him at the tower. I did not see him with her." The weirwood leaves moved once, a slow red wave. "I let myself think what the world thought. I let myself think what you needed to hear." "Bran." "Jon, say it." Bran said it. "You are not his son." For a moment there was only the creak of the weirwood and Ghost's breath across the pool. Jon heard a bird somewhere high up try a note and abandon it. He heard his own heart, too loud, like a drum unmuted by a curtain. "Whose then?" "Lyanna's." A patience, almost kind. "I know. That is not the question." "Whose?" His voice had gone flat. Bran's eyes went far for a moment, the way they did when he was not exactly here. When he came back, it was with a tenderness that was almost unbearable because Bran did not deal in tenderness any longer. "She came to the city first. Before she ever rode with Rhaegar, before the tourney at Harrenhal was even called, Father sent her south on a ship to Dragonstone to see Alea's new babe. Aerys received her at King's Landing before she sailed. He kept her 3 nights. 3. Jon's voice left him. He was the king. She was a Stark. She was 15. He was a madman. Bran's voice did not rise, it never rose anymore, but it did not soften either, and there was no way to pretend the words away. "She told no one. She came home. At Harrenhal she danced with Rhaegar because she was already with child, and she was weeping, and he found her alone in the woods, and she told him. Only him." Jon could not look at Bran anymore. He looked at the pool. The black water had his face in it, thinned and wavering. He saw, for an instant, a stranger's face beneath his own paler hair, a thinner mouth, eyes that were not quite like his. "Rhaegar took her away," Bran said. "Not for love, to hide her. His father had begun to burn men that summer, and she carried his blood. Rhaegar meant to hide her until the child was delivered, then return her to the north quietly, with honor if he could manage it. A Stark bastard would not have been more than a scandal. A Targaryen bastard the Mad King had made on a northern girl. He did not finish. She fled." Jon heard his own voice without recognizing it. "She did not flee. She went." A fine distinction, but Bran made it deliberately. "Rhaegar's men rode with her. Went. Dane, Hightower. He thought she would be safer with 3 swords of the Kingsguard than with all the stewards of Dragonstone. He was wrong. The king would have found her in either place, but Rhaegar died on the Trident before the king got his hands on her. So, Jon could not make the word. "Lyanna did not die of love, Jon. She died of your birth. She did not lie with Rhaegar. She lay once with a man who called himself a king, and called himself a god, and called himself the worthier brother of Steffon Baratheon. A man who burned our grandfather alive. A man who strangled our uncle with a chain while Aerys' own son tried to look away." Bran's voice became, for a breath, a boy's voice. "I am sorry, Jon. I saw it too clear. I could not unsee it. I could not say it to you any time sooner. Forgive me." There was no answer to that. There was nothing at all. Jon closed his eyes and felt, somewhere below his ribs, a weight he had carried all his life shift in a way that did not lighten it, only told him its true shape. He had always thought his grief was that he did not know his mother. It was not that. It had never been that. His grief was that he had always suspected some deeper refusal in Ned's face, some silence built too carefully to only be about a father's honor. And now he knew the silence had not been about a father's honor at all. It had been about a boy his father had loved enough to refuse to name. Ghost rose across the pool. The wolf came around, wading through the shallow water without flinching, and set his jaw against Jon's boot. Jon put a hand into the thick winter fur at his neck. The wolf leaned in. "He is real, Jon." Bran very softly. "I know he is." "I mean you are. You are a man who loves this wolf. You are the man who called the free folk south when no one else would. You are the man who stepped in front of the Night King with a sword that did not fit your hand, and did not flinch, and did not run. None of that is undone by whose seed you are," Jon said. "Then why tell me?" "Because you needed to know before you met her." Jon understood at once. Deaneries. "And because," Bran said, and here his voice was not the raven's voice but a boy's again, an old boy who remembered climbing. "If I lied to you by the thing I showed and the thing I withheld, you would have ridden south believing you were Rhaegar's son, and every choice you made would have been that man's choices. And you are not that man, Jon. For good or ill, you are another man. You should know before you go." Jon did not weep. He could not. The cold was not what was keeping him dry-eyed. It was that there was a great quiet under his breastbone now, broader than grief, a kind of listening. He listened into himself for the first time like a man looking down a well. "Have I ever?" He stopped. "Have I ever been like him?" Bran waited. "I mean, have I ever wanted things only a madman would want? Have I ever taken pleasure in pain? Have I ever burned? You have wanted to kill," Bran said gently. "You have killed. You have hated. You have looked at Ramsay Bolton with a face I would not have wanted turned on me. You have felt the heat in your hands when a man pushed you past yourself, and once, with Ollie and the others, you signed orders with an iron face, and you did it very well. You are a man, Jon. You have what a man has." His gaze went level. "But you have never wanted to see a city burn. You have never laughed at a scream. You have never ordered a boy's father put to the torch because a boy asked questions. You have never strangled a man with a chain and set his son to watch. Your coin has landed, Jon. It has been landing every day of your life. That is what I came to tell you." The weirwood bled slow sap at its eyes. A drop ran, caught, hung, fell. Jon said after a time, "You said she came to me. Rhaegar, why did she tell him?" "He was kind," Bran said. "He was always kind." "Then why didn't he speak for her at court? Why didn't he stand with her against his father? He had the dragon in him too." "He was one man," Bran said, "and his father had already been kind once to Sir Ilyn Payne." Jon nodded without meaning to. The night with no tongue. There were people one did not anger and remain able to speak afterwards. Rhaegar had not been Aerys. The world had thought Rhaegar would not be Aerys. That had been the hope of the realm. But a hope was not a sword. And Rhaegar had chosen. The thing Bran was not saying, but Jon could hear it. Rhaegar had chosen to hide her rather than to fight his father in the open, because a fight in the open would have ended with her strung from a rafter, and Jon taken out in a brazier before he breathed a second breath. Jon was, he realized slowly, glad Rhaegar had been a coward. The word was a coward's word. He did not love it, but the alternative was that he, Jon, would never have been, and for reasons he did not quite understand, he did not yet want not to have been. "Does Sansa know?" he asked. "No." "Arya?" "No." "Bran, tell me I can tell her." "When the war is won," Bran said. "Not before. The Unsullied believe they follow Rhaegar's son. If they knew who fathered you, they would follow you still, perhaps, because they know the shape of you. But many in this camp would hear only the name Aerys." and there are others who would hear it from the wrong lips. He looked once at the wall above them as though a raven or a spy might be up there listening. There are always other lips. Deaneries. Deaneries, too, when you choose, but Jon, Bran's voice slowed. She is a sister, not an aunt. If that changes what you have felt, let it. Jon made a small noise that he had meant for laughter. It did not come out as any kind of laughter. You think I have felt? I think you have felt the sea when it touches a stone, Bran said. It is not the stone's fault. Jon sat with that. Ghost had put his whole head into Jon's lap now, and Jon's hands were in his fur, and he pulled the wolf close and rested his forehead against the broad, pale skull. He could hear, if he listened very carefully, the whisper of the wolf's breath in him, the way he always could. He could hear something else, too, faint and old, as if at the limit of his hearing a door had opened in a room he had not known was there. He did not try to go in. He did not let himself. Bran, he said into Ghost's fur, thank you. Why, for not waiting. I don't know what I will be tomorrow. But I would rather have the truth and decide than not have it and find out I had been a fool. Bran said, and for a moment he might have been a boy of 10 again, trying not to smile at a compliment. When Jon rose, the light had shifted. The weirwood's red had deepened, not because of any change in the sun, but because his eyes now saw it differently. He stood a long moment with his hand on the trunk. The bark was cold. He thought of his father, Ned, who he would always call father, because fathers were chosen by the choosing, who had ridden into that tower and come out with a new son, and a grief he carried to his death. He thought of how Ned had looked at him, sometimes, over a table in Winterfell's hall, and how those looks had never been resentment, only a kind of watchful love, the way a man might look at a candle he knew could become a fire if the wind shifted. Ned had been watching for Aerys all along. Ned had watched and never seen him. Jon almost laughed. Even now his first impulse was pride that a dead man had not caught a glimpse of a devil in him. Pride was a small thing compared to grief, and yet sometimes the small thing was all that held a man upright. He walked out of the godswood with Ghost at his hip. At the gate, he bent and pressed his forehead again to the wolf's head. Don't be shy of me, he said quietly. I am the same man. Ghost's tongue flicked out and caught his cheek. Jon held him a breath longer, and then they went out together, under the archway, past the guards, into the courtyard where smiths were already shaping new horseshoes for the long road south. Davos caught sight of him across the courtyard and moved toward him with that easy old sailor gait, but something in Jon's face slowed him. Davos stopped, nodded, changed his route. Jon was grateful. He did not have words yet. In the stable, he found a boy of perhaps 14 rubbing down a bay gelding. The boy looked up and startled. Jon gestured him to go on and took a brush himself from the hook on the wall and began to work on a different horse, a rangy gray he had ridden often since the night's watch had unmade him. The brush moved in long, calm strokes. He did not think of anything. He let the horse's warmth be a whole thought. Sansa came into the stable about the time the light at the doors had become afternoon. She stood watching him a little while before she spoke. You weren't in the hall for the council. I know. Targaryen wanted to argue about grain again. Targaryen always wants to argue about grain. It is a good argument. She came a few steps closer, not too close. She had learned a stark trick that their father had used on their mother, and that Jon, it seemed, had taught his sister. She stood where she could be ignored if need be and where she could not be avoided. Jon, yes, are you well? I will be. She let a silence sit between them long enough that the stable boy got nervous and left with his buckets. Then she said, Bran. Yes. Bran has been waking me up with dreams. She said it as though she were reporting the weather. Nothing he has said, I just wake from dreams I did not have, of a tower, of you, Sansa. I am not going to ask you, Jon, I only want you to know I know there is something, and I am your sister. What I am for is holding doors." She smiled at him, a small, thin smile that was not a smile from Winterfell before the war. It was the smile of a woman who had come through and had a face for it. "Whenever you want to go through the door, I will hold it." He could not speak for a moment. He nodded, twice, quickly, and bent his face back to the horse. She came and put a hand on his shoulder. She did not say anything else. She stood there until the gray rolled his eye at her in that way horses have of telling a person they are welcome to stay or to leave, but should decide soon. Sansa laughed, the first laugh he had heard out of her in many days, and patted the gray's shoulder and left him to it. When the horse was groomed, JON went to the hall. He ate the first hot food he had eaten in a day. Targaryen was there, and raised his cup in salute, and made his careful little joke about grain. Aerys came in after the meal's midpoint with a dragon's stride and that quiet authority she had, and took her seat at the high table and looked at him across the room. He met her eyes. He did not look away. He did not look too long. He saw, for the first time that day, what Bran had meant a sister, and he felt, under the word, another word waiting, which was fear, because he did not know what either of them would do with the truth when it came between them. He ate. He drank a little. He listened while Jorah Mormont spoke of the northern horses' hooves and what roads they would need. He listened while Tyrion argued with Sansa about grain more carefully than he usually argued. He watched Daenerys listen. She was listening well. She was listening like a queen who meant to be one, and not merely to be known as one. When the hall had emptied, JON went out into the courtyard again and stood looking up at the broken tower that Bran had fallen from once. It had been half repaired and then ruined again by the Night King's giants. The work would have to begin a third time. There was a lot that would have to begin a third time in this castle and in this world. He breathed in the cold air until it burned. "I am a man," he said to no one. "I am the son of a man I did not know. I do not have to be him. I do not have to be anyone but myself." He said it as a prayer, or perhaps as a warning. He said it to hear it said. He said it so that whatever was now loose in him, the old listening, the open door, would hear that there would be rules in the house it had come into. Ghost came from the stable and sat at his heel. The stars were starting to show above the broken tower. A single early one pulsed in the east, white and quiet. JON stood under it until his breath came even. He did not cry. He did not shake. He did not ask anything of himself that he could not give. He stood like a man, and the wolf stood with him, and the castle creaked in its old bones around them. In the morning they would ride south. He had 2 moons of road to decide how to be who he was. He could not yet say what he would be. He could say only what he would not. He would not be burned. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. The long road south. They rode out of Winterfell on a morning so cold the horse's breath hung in sheets behind the column. The host had learned, in the years of this war, to move quietly on its own initiative. And the quiet now was of men whose mothers had taught them the value of a full wagon and a mended boot. Dothraki in their leathers, unsullied in their spiked caps, northern levies in their wool and mail, 100 wildling outriders that Tormund had sworn would not eat any horse they had not killed themselves. Daenerys rode at the head in a dark cloak with silver fastenings, small in the saddle and not small in any other way. JON rode with the northern van. He could have ridden at her side. He did not. Davos Seaworth found him on the 3rd afternoon out, when the army had stopped to water the horses in a crook of the King's Road. Davos came up with that flat look of his, a sailor's courtesy, and stood a while without speaking. It was one of the things JON liked about Davos, that he understood that silence could be a place a man went and did not always need fetching back. "You've been riding with your collar up. It's cold. It's cold on both sides of the column." JON smiled without meaning to. "Aye. Your queen rides alone. She has the Dothraki. She has the Dothraki when she wants the Dothraki." Just now she has a lot of empty air on one side of her horse, and she is pretending she does not notice the draft. Davos tipped his head, not a reproof. You needn't tell me why. I thought you would want to know that whatever you think you're not hiding it. JON looked off at the horizon. A black line of trees, white sky, the gray smudge of a village in the distance where a thin column of smoke meant people were still alive to heat water. Davos. He said, tell me something, if I know it, your sons. Davos went still. It was a rare thing to ask Davos Seaworth about his sons. JON did not look at him when he asked. What would you say to them if you could say anything if they were standing here? Davos thought. He did not take long. It was not an answer he had to look for. It was an answer he had kept in his pocket through long winters. I'd tell them I was sorry, he said, for putting them where I put them, not for my faith in them which they earned, only for the ground I had chosen for them to stand on. Did you choose the ground? I did, every father does, whether he knows it or not. Davos watched the distant smoke. A man has his own father's ground under him and stands there and has children, and his children come up on whatever ground he was standing on. If you're a smuggler, your boys come up on a quay among the rope coils and the tar. If you're a knight, they come up on gravel, clanking. Either way, they come up on you. The kind thing a father can do, I reckon, is to know where he is standing and then, if he can, move. Choose better ground than the ground he was given, even if it's only a span to the left. JON nodded slowly. And if a man does not know what ground he came up on, if he only lately learned it, then he'd better do his knowing fast, said Davos, because his boots are already on it. JON felt his throat work. I'll not pry, Jon Snow. Davos turned and faced him square. I can guess the weight of you without knowing the shape of it. I only ask this, whatever it is, don't carry it by yourself until it breaks you. Men who do break on us. And we've a great deal of need of you unbroken. Thank you, Davos. HM. Davos nodded as if that were settlement enough and walked off to his horse. JON sat a while after he had gone. Then he swung up into his saddle and rode forward, not to Daenerys' side. He could not do that yet. He was not that honest a man yet, but close enough that she would see him, and know he was close, which was the first step on a road he did not yet know he was walking. That night, they made camp in a deserted village on a low rise where stone foundations stood like broken teeth. The village had a name, but no one among them knew it. A raven had flown south weeks before to say the long night was won. Some of these villages had sent their men home to plant and found them home and were remaking themselves. Others had sent their men and never heard the answer. This was one of the second kind. JON walked the ruins as the cook set up. There was a well, untouched, a stone hearth, scrubbed by wind, a child's spinning top, its paint chipped, lying under a wagon wheel where someone once had let it roll and never come back for it. He picked up the top and turned it in his fingers. He did not know why. He put it in his pocket. Later, when the cook fires were low, he sat on a flat stone near the lowest fire and tried to eat his bowl. A figure came and sat across from him and extended long gloved fingers to the flame, and he did not have to look to know. Your Grace, he said. JON. Daenerys' voice these days had a layered quality. You heard the woman she was, and behind her the queen she was forging, and sometimes, in rare moments, you heard also something older, something Valyrian, a wind out of a very high place. Tonight it was mostly woman. You have been avoiding me. I have been thinking. I might have helped you think. I did not want to think aloud. She was silent a while. She did not press, and he was grateful and also a little ashamed. Her smaller hands were very steady over the fire. She did not wear the rings of her Western court tonight. She wore one silver thing on a chain that sometimes was under her cloak and sometimes was not. He did not know what it was and had not asked. There was a great deal he had not asked her, and a great deal he had not told her, and the distance between the two was becoming a third thing, a creature with weight and breath. "Tyrion tells me," she said, "that your mood has changed since we left Winterfell. Tyrion sees more than he should. He is paid to." JON did not answer. After a little while she reached across the space between them and put her hand on his knee very lightly, as one might touch a man who had shut his eyes. "I can wait," she said. He could not bear that. He put his hand on hers for a moment, and then, before he could keep it there, he moved. "Thank you," he said. She looked at him. She did not take her hand back right away. "I have had cruel lovers, JON. I have had careful ones. I have not had a kind one. Kindness frightens me. I will wait." He could not speak. She rose, unhurried, and went back to her own fire, and he sat by his bowl for a long time, forgetting to eat. Sleep was thin that night. It came in the way a thing comes in a dream. He lay with his cloak over him and his head on his saddle and ghost against his back, and when he closed his eyes he was not in the ruined village anymore. He was in a room of pale stone that smelled faintly of salt. It was a grand chamber with a painted ceiling. Men stood against the walls in dragon's livery. A young man in silver finery stood laughing at the center of a group of knights, and the young man's hair was the color of old bone, and his eyes were very dark blue, and his mouth was a shapely mouth, made of laughter. The knights around him were younger than JON's memory of them could have been. A man he thought might be Tywin Lannister, but 30, his hair still gold, his face still held by humor. A man of middle height whose name JON could not quite pull to mind, who must have been a Velaryon, by the sea in his tan cheeks. The young man in silver had a goblet in his hand and a story on his tongue. And the Maester came at a run, very proud, and set his foot in the bucket and the goat. He stopped, laughing, and everyone laughed with him, not because he was their prince, but because he was telling the story well. The goat, friends, was having the most splendid afternoon of its life. You have never seen a prouder goat in your days. JON stood at the back of this dream, a dark thing in a silver room, and he watched a young man who would one day be Aerys Roman II Targaryen laugh as if there were only laughter in the world. He was charming. He was handsome. He had the face of a man whose friends wanted to do well for him. There was no darkness in him yet that JON could see. Or there was only the darkness any living man has, the usual nighttime in every human being not larger than a hand on the table. The dream moved as dreams do. The room was different. The same prince now, older, thinner. The laughter had gone out of him. He was pacing in a circle in a chamber JON recognized from maps and hearsay, the Red Keep's small council hall. He was speaking very quickly to a scribe and listing things. Baratheons, Lannisters, Vale men, Tullys, Stark, 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 Stark. He said each name with a wet, slapping sound as though he were biting into fruit. "My son. Ask me again about my son. Go on." A voice JON did not place spoke from somewhere behind the king. "Your Grace," the voice said carefully. "The realm has had a good harvest. The small folk sing of, the small folk sing." The king turned, and his face was not a face that sang. "The small folk do not sing. They whisper. They always have. They have been whispering since my father sat the throne and his father before him, and I will not be called to give an account of myself by a whisper in a hayloft. Do you hear me?" "I hear you, Your Grace." "Good." He stopped pacing. He sat down heavily. He looked at his own hands as though he did not know them. "Bring me the pyromancer." The dream moved again. JON saw the king at a window in a tower of the Red Keep with a torch in his hand, holding it up to the glass. A column of smoke rose from the city below. The king smiled, and the smile JON's stomach turned, because the smile was a man's smile, a known smile, the small smile of a man who has arrived at a private joy. He stood in the window with that smile, and the firelight from the torch he had lit went up his face, and JON saw, for the first time in his life, the shape of his own brow, his own cheekbone. the hook of a small bone at the temple. He had the king's cheekbones. He had the king's brow. Not Rhaegar's, his own. He woke. He did not jerk. He did not cry out. He woke as a man wakes who has heard a door open in his house when he lived alone. Ghost was already awake, watching him across the blanket with steady red eyes. "It's me," he whispered to the wolf. "It's me. It's still me." Ghost licked his hand. Jon got up and walked out of the tent into the snow and stood in the air until his lungs hurt. In the morning he rode harder than he usually did. The column moved south down the King's Road, and each mile there were more signs that a war was running ahead of them. Not the old war, not the White Walker War. That was a story for grandchildren now. The ordinary war, the kind that takes barns and daughters. Cersei had allies along the road, and those allies were not shy of making their welcome known. 3 days south of the Neck, they came to a village that was smoking. The smoke was the clean sort, not wood but tallow. A man who has grown up near cookhouses can tell the smell. Jon rode ahead with Tormund and a half-score of northern riders. There were wooden crosses set up along the road. Not new. A week old, perhaps. A woman and 2 children on each cross. The children hung at the elbows and feet like dolls. A sigil had been cut into the bark at the bottom of each cross. An elephant. "Golden Company," said Tormund quietly. He had seen more than most northern men, but even his voice was thinned by it. Jon did not speak. He dismounted. He went from one cross to the next. He counted. 11. He stood before the last. A woman with a child still hanging crooked in her arms, as though in her last moments she had tried to hold the child up to ease his weight. Her hair had been cut short. She had been young. Someone had laughed while doing this. He could see it in the placement of the sigil. A man pleased with his own work will carve a little deeper at the end. Jon felt it come. It was not the flash of anger he had known all his life, the red that crossed his eyes at pain. It was the other thing. The listening door in the old house had opened wider, and through it he heard a voice not quite his own say, "Show them how." It said it in many ways at once. It said, "Ride into their camp tonight and leave no man who will not wake in the morning not still screaming." It said, "Find the man who laughed and salt him with his own sigil, scored deep, and hang him where the crows can be grateful." It said, "Take a dragon and go south and make an elephant cook in its skin." The voice was quiet. It was clear. It was not a fever. It was in him as his tongue was in him. A natural thing of his own body, something he had owned all his life, not so much commanding him as reminding him that it had been there all along. He stood very still. He did not answer the voice. He did not argue with it. He took the woman down. He took her down from the cross, and the child from her arms, and he took them and the others, one by one, down, and he laid them in the snow. And when a rider from the northern column came up and started to speak, he held up his hand, and the rider was quiet. Tormund walked beside him without saying anything, and they worked in silence as the column came up. Sir Jorah came. Sir Davos, a young Dothraki of Daenerys' Khalasar who had thought this lot beneath the plane of his people. Unsullied came and worked with the precision with which they did everything. In an hour the crosses were down and the dead had been put in a row. In another hour they were in a long pit of soft ground that the cold had not yet reached. Men sang over them. The Northern sang the song of the bridal sleep that was sung over any woman dead too young. The Dothraki sang their own song that Jon did not know. The Unsullied stood silent in a rank, and that, for them, was the song. Daenerys came with her dragons ahead of her. Drogon circled once over the village, a black rush that took everyone's eyes up. Rhaegal came behind. Dany dismounted and walked to the pit. She looked down into it. She did not speak for a long while. When she spoke, it was to the air and not to Jon in particular, but the air carried her words to him. "Those who did this," she said, "will be held accountable. Your Grace." Jon's voice was his again. Accountable how? By their own terms. She did not turn. They do this to teach us to fear. I will teach them that their teachers are fools. Your Grace, if we pursue them tonight, we are not pursuing them tonight, Your Grace. Now she did turn. Jon, we ride now, he said. We take 10, we are fast. They will not know what has taken them. We will leave their sigil on the man who laughs. The words came out of him in the wrong voice. He felt ghost against his thigh growl low. He did not hear himself. He stopped. He closed his mouth. He breathed in. He breathed out. Aerys was looking at him with her full attention. The quiet she did so well, she waited for him. We ride in the morning, Jon said at last, in formation. We take what of them we can take, we do not become what they are. No, she said, we do not. Something in her face was not pleased with him, something else was. She walked past him to the head of the pit and lowered her head. He watched the top of her silver hair bend. The wind moved it. She said a few words he could not hear. He did not try and straightened and went back to the black, and the black carried her into the sky. Targaryen came up at Jon's elbow as the dragon's shadow passed. I had wondered whether you had a temper, Targaryen said. I am glad to learn it. I am gladder to see you shorten it. Targaryen. Yes. When I came to Dragonstone, what did you think? Targaryen considered. I thought you were a very serious man with bad posture. I thought you would be either very useful or very inconvenient. I have been pleasantly surprised by which. I am asking you something else. I know you are asking me something else. Targaryen looked up at him, small and shrewd. Jon. Whatever you think you have asked me, I have not answered. Let us both be relieved at that. Jon said. I like you when you talk like a cynic. It is easier to believe you. Belief is so often made of the wrong parts, isn't it? That night, they made camp a mile past the burned village, out of the smell. The men were subdued. Jorah posted doubled sentries without being asked. Jon stood a time at the edge of his tent and looked up. Regal was gliding a slow circle above the camp, a green moving shadow against the northern stars. The green dragon had been strange with him ever since Dragonstone. Not afraid, not wary, interested. He felt a larger breath of wind, a presence like the shift of a tide. He turned. Drogon had come down to land on the far side of the camp, silent as a great cat, in a way that so large a creature had no right to manage. The black's eyes were on him. The black's breath smoked. Jon walked. He had not meant to. He walked across the cleared ground, past fires that fell silent as he passed, past the Dothraki who stopped talking and watched like men at a play. He stopped 10 paces from Drogon. He did not put his hand up. He let the dragon see him. Drogon did not raise his head. Drogon, in fact, lowered his long throat down to the ground and lay his head on his crossed talons, like a hound. The eye closer to Jon was a slow, deep gold. The head was bigger than a wagon. The breath from the nostrils was warm enough in this cold air to be a smell, smoke, iron, distant salt. Jon said quietly, I am not here to climb you. The dragon made a sound that was not quite a purr. There is no word for what a dragon makes when it is not making death. Jon stepped closer. He was within reach now of a mouth that could have eaten him whole. I am the son of a man you should hate. He said, I will not command you. I will not ask you to come when I call. I will not make you a weapon. If you and I are to walk together, we walk together. The eye watched him. Jon put his hand out. Drogon tilted his great head a fraction of an inch and pressed the bony plate of his brow, slightly, against Jon's palm. The scale was warm. The skin under the scale was warmer. A low vibration went through the whole dragon, down his spine, into the ground. Jon felt the ground hum beneath his boots. Behind him, on the far side of the fires, Aerys had come out of her tent without her cloak. She was watching. Targaryen was watching. Half the camp was watching. Jon took his hand away. Drogon's head did not move. Jon nodded to the dragon. A small nod man to man, and turned and walked back across the cleared ground. Men moved aside for him. Dothraki muttered. An unsullied officer saluted without knowing he was doing it. Daenerys met him at the edge of the firelight. She did not speak for a long moment. Then she said very softly, "Jon, what is happening?" he said. "I will tell you tomorrow or the day after, soon. I will tell you, I need to find the words." She studied his face. "You are not afraid of him. No, you never were." She said it almost to herself. "I had not thought that was strange. I thought you were a wolf. Wolves do not scare easy. Dany." "You may call me Dany," she said, without looking at him, "so long as you do not say it like goodbye." He did not know how to answer that. She nodded to herself as if she had not required an answer. She turned and went back to her tent. He watched her go, and he felt, as he watched, his hand find the spinning top in his pocket and turn it, and turn it, and turn it again. Far to the south that same night, Cersei Lannister stood in a high window of the Red Keep and looked down at her city. The bells had rung for vespers, and the smoke from the cook fires had joined the smoke from the always burning pit, where the executioner's heap was kept. The air was the color of wine held up to a candle. "Tell me again about the caches," she said, without turning. Qyburn's soft voice came at her shoulder. 11 under the sept, your grace. 6 beneath the dragon pit. 8 spaced along the mud gate to the Blackwater. 4 under the Tower of the Hand. He paused. "I would prefer 12, but the Alchemists' Guild has grown slow under war conditions." "They will be quick if they want to live." "They want to live, your grace." "Good." She turned her small, sharp face from the window. "What have you heard from the north?" "Our watchers in White Harbor report the host moving at ordinary pace. No dragon ahead. 2 dragons in the air behind. The third in the company of a man who may yet be worth his price. Yes, I remember. Euron." "Yes, your grace." "And Jon Snow." Qyburn hesitated, a thing he rarely did. "What?" "A letter, your grace, carried by a sparrow. It is eccentric. It speaks of a secret worth gold if we can verify. It speaks of the Stark bastard's true father." Cersei waited. "It does not name the father," said Qyburn. "Yet, the writer wishes to be paid for the name." Cersei smiled a small, careful smile, and went and sat down in her chair and put the fingers of one hand over the fingers of the other. "Pay him a third, Qyburn. Pay him the rest when he tells us the name. A third may not be enough to buy him. A third is enough to make him ours. Then we will buy him the rest of the way." "Yes, your grace." "And Qyburn, send a man for Bronn. I want him to understand that if he takes the Stark Queen's silver, he will not find his castle quite so pleasant as he has imagined. In fact, I want him to understand that the pleasantness of his castle will very much depend on his loyalty. Tell him as though you were not telling him. He understands the way my mouth works." "Yes, your grace." Cersei turned her head, and the last of the light through her window caught her hair, so that for an instant she looked like the girl she had been at 14, before Robert, before the Mad King, before she had learned in what small rooms crowns are decided. "One more thing," she said. "Have a man watch my brother Jaime, the one with the hand. I love him very much. I would hate for him to forget me. It shall be done." Qyburn bowed and withdrew. Cersei looked back at the city. The bells had stopped. The smell of cook fires and tallow was turning into the smell of night, damp wood, river mud, and, under it all, the slow, sweet stench of the dragon pits where nothing had burned in a century and a half. She breathed it in. It belonged to her. She meant to keep it. Far to the north, Jon lay at last in his tent, his cloak over him, ghost against his back. Above him, faintly, he heard the slow, deep breath of Drogon, curled now at the edge of the camp. The dragon had not gone. The dragon did not go. He put his hand into Ghost's fur and closed his eyes. "I am a man," he said again, not aloud. "I am a man." Sleep took him into no dreams, and he was grateful. Chapter 2. End chapter 3. Brother and sister, the King's Road bent west at Moat Cailin and broke into hill country, and the country broke into more country, and they found themselves in a land where nothing was flat for more than half a mile. The host made fewer miles a day. The air warmed. The first green of the year showed in the hedgerows, and a horse could be seen eating, instead of merely unhappily standing. Scouts rode ahead and scouts rode behind, and Jon began to sleep less and less, not from the old listening at the door in him, but from the plain, reasonable watchfulness of a man traveling with 60,000 of his own people through land that had lately been reaped by other people's knives. They crossed a river on a broken bridge where the stones had been pried out and relaid. Children watched them from the far bank with the flat eyes of children who have learned not to love an army. Jon rode at the head that morning beside Daenerys, not because he had chosen to, but because Targaryen had arranged it so, telling them both separately over breakfast in such a casual voice that neither of them had been able to protest without looking ridiculous. "My wolf trick," Targaryen said afterwards to Missandei, not expecting to be overheard. "I corral them where I need them. They do not know yet that the sheep is hurting the shepherd." Missandei smiled without saying anything. Jon and Daenerys rode in silence for most of a morning. The sun found its way out once and then was lost again behind a thin white cloud. A hawk above them made 2 long circles and went away. "There is a sept," Jon said finally, "on that ridge. Do you see it?" She looked. The ridge had a stand of broken walls with a single stone tower half fallen. The roof of the nave was gone. It looked more like a tooth in an old jaw than a building. She nodded. "I would speak with you in it." She did not ask why. She only said, "When we camp." "All right." The host made camp that evening in the river valley below the ridge. The smell of horses and cooking filled the low ground. Jon told his attendants he was going to walk. He was not trailed, because the northern men knew when he wanted to be walked with and when he did not. Ghost came with him. Daenerys came a half-hour later with only Jorah to guard her, and when they reached the ruined sept, she told Jorah to wait at a stone marker at the bottom of the path. Jorah looked once at Jon. Jon met his eye. Jorah nodded without pleasure and stayed. The sept had been small once, a village sept, not a lord's. The 7 faces on the walls had been smashed long ago. How long, Jon could not tell. Some hero of the old faith had come through, perhaps in the time of the last Targaryen reign, and made himself known. The stone of the altar was overturned in the grass. Birds had nested in the broken rafters. There was moss over everything that could hold moss. Daenerys stepped through the arch that had once held the door. She paused under the empty sky where the roof should have been and looked up. "This is not where I thought we would speak," she said. "I thought under a tree or in the open. Neither of those has walls. You want walls?" "Yes." She turned to him. He had practiced what he would say, and he found now that he did not know how to begin, so he did not begin with words. He said instead, "Dany, come here." She came. She stood before him, small, straight-backed, the lines at her mouth that had not been there when he first saw her on Dragonstone now showing faintly not age but the use of her face. He put his hand on her cheek for the barest moment. She let him. "I will say this plainly," he said, "because the slower I go the more it hurts. Rhaegar is not my father." She went still. "Bran saw it," he said. "Bran saw all of it. I can tell you the shape of what he saw. But the short of it, my mother lay with Aerys, not with Rhaegar. Rhaegar took her south to hide her from his father when he learned. He died before he could return her. I am not your nephew, Dany. I am your brother." He watched her. He could not tell for a long moment what was happening in her face, and then he could, and then he wished he could not. It was not one thing. It was many things at once, and each of them came forward a little at a time as the word settled, shock first. Her lips parted. Her eyes went wider than their ordinary size. She did not cry out, she did not step back. then something that was a poor cousin of joy. He saw it and hated himself for seeing it, and hated himself more because he had felt the same thing in his own chest the night he had first understood. The thought had been there in the dark before he had made himself put a stop to it. She was not, she had never been his aunt. He had lain with his aunt. He had loved his aunt. The relief had come like bile. Now her face showed that same small, horrible relief, and then, a beat behind it, grief. Not for herself, for him, for the shape of it. She saw what he had carried alone these weeks, and she saw it in full in one go, and her mouth trembled before she got hold of it. "Jon, Dany, tell me all of it," he told her. It took a while. He used mostly the words Bran had used because they were precise and did not lie. He did not soften any of it. He did not ornament any of it. When he came to the part about the 3 nights, she put her fingers on her mouth and did not move them for a long time, and he waited until she was ready before he went on. When he came to the Tower of Joy, she sat down on a broken pew and he sat down beside her, and their shoulders touched, and they stayed that way for the rest of it. When he was done, she did not speak for a little while. Then she said, "I have been having a dream." "Tell me." "I have been having it since I was a girl in Bravos. A man sits at the end of my bed. He speaks to me without turning around. I cannot see his face. He tells me what I should do. He tells me not to be afraid. He tells me that fire is our friend, that men are a thin, weak sort of creature, and that a queen is not a queen until the world smells of her burning. He tells me I am his little one and he loves me. Dany. I thought for years that it was Rhaegar, or that it was Viserys before he died. After I came to Qarth, after the House of the Undying, I learned who it was. It was my father. It is my father. I hear him in my dreams, Jon. I have been hearing him all my life. And some nights I get up after the dream and I look at my own hand, and I cannot tell whether it will open into a hand or into a claw." She did not look at him. "I did not tell you because I was afraid you would look at me the way you are looking at me now. I am not with horror. With recognition." She did look at him now. "You have been hearing him too?" "Yes, since Winterfell. Since before Winterfell, I think. I did not know it was a voice. I thought it was my own anger. I thought it was the thing a man has that he manages. But when I learned, I heard it, Dany, at the ruined village. I heard it." She closed her eyes. She leaned her forehead against his shoulder lightly, not to weep, only to rest. He let her. He put his arm around her shoulders and he held her, and he felt, very clearly, for the first time since Bran had spoken to him in the godswood, that what he held in his arm was not a woman he had lain with and must now grieve, but a sister he had been given, and that he must learn to hold. It was a strange relief. It was not simple. He did not lie to himself. He had loved her body and her mouth, and the body and the mouth were still there in his arm, and he was a man, and he knew what a man did not stop knowing on short notice. But under the knowing there was now another shape, older and quieter, and that shape was family, and he had spent his life being hungry for that shape, and he would not pretend, even in this wound, that it did not answer a hunger. She pulled back after a time. She looked at his face. "We cannot lie with each other again," she said. "Not because of you, because of the child. There is no child. There will be if we lie with each other. And I will not bring a child of 2 Targaryens onto a throne my father sat. Not after what his father and his father's father made of their children. That is how the madness comes, Jon. Marriage too close. Blood too thick. It is how it came to him. I will not be his way back." He thought about that. He said, "Agreed." She laughed, a small laugh, almost a sob. "Agreed." "Is that a prayer?" "It is the best I can say right now." She put her hand on his knee as she had put it in the village, and this time he put his hand on hers and kept it there. "Jon," she said, "what are we going to do? We are going to finish what we came south to do. We are going to take the Iron Throne. We are. I am going to sit it. You are. And you." He looked at her. I am going to be whatever I need to be so that you can. And when it is over, if I have any blood left in me, I am going to go north and find whether I am a man or a thing. You are a man, Dany. I have Aerys' coin in my pocket. Every day I spin it. Every day it lands. The day it lands on the wrong side, I will not trust my own voice telling me I am a man. Then let me. She took his face in both hands, and she did it as a sister, not a lover. It was, oddly, harder. Let me tell you on the day what you are. If you are not there, I will be there. I will always be there. I will be there whether you want me to be or not. Then you will tell me. Then I will tell you. She dropped her hands. And you will tell me. Because I have his coin too, Jon. I have it every day. I have had it in my pocket since Meereen. I had it in my pocket in a stapper. I have it in my pocket now. I will tell you. Agreed. She smiled without smiling. There. Now it is a prayer. They stayed in the sept a while longer. They did not speak of the throne or the war or the South. They spoke of small things. She told him what it had been like to be a girl in Bravos with the Red Door. He told her what it had been like to be a bastard in Winterfell. She described Viserys' hands around her throat. He described his own hands on Ollie. They traded these things without flinching and without drama. When they left the sept, they left together, and Jorah, at the stone, looked at them and said nothing and walked back to camp behind them like a guard dog that knows when its work is merely to be seen. That same afternoon, Tyrion Lannister sat in Varys' tent on a low stool that was too low for him. Varys was standing, arranging small objects on a traveling writing desk as though the placement of them would tell him something. A pot of ink, a stick of red wax, 2 quills, one new and one used. A copper seal in the shape of a spider. I asked you twice, Tyrion said. I know. I will ask a third time and then I will not ask. I know you will not. Varys, look at me. Varys turned. His round face was tired. His eyes, his famously colorless eyes, had a hollow in them where the humor usually was. I served your father once, Varys said. I do not mean Tywin, I mean Rhaegar. And before Rhaegar I served his father, and before Aerys I served Aerys' father, and before Jaehaerys I served the lord who served Jaehaerys' father. I have served one house all my life, Tyrion. I have never pretended to serve the realm. I have pretended to pretend. It is a fine distinction, but it has been my life's work to make it. You have been an actor. All king's servants are actors. The best ones forget the part. Varys, the letters. Varys said nothing for a long moment. Tyrion said, I found them. I know you found them. You left them to be found. I did not. Varys. I did not, Tyrion. I have been tired. My clerk did not refile. I do not give him enough. I should have, after the battle of the long night, given everyone a little more. I did not. He did not file. You found them. There it is. Tyrion drew a small bundle of parchments from inside his cloak. He laid them on the writing desk. They were tied with a strip of black ribbon. The uppermost sheet had, in very old ink, a seal of a 3-eyed raven. Bloodraven, Tyrion said. Yes, writing to you. Yes. In a year when, by my count, he had already been on the wall 20 years and walked off it into the snow a decade before that. He never entirely left the world, Tyrion. Men like that do not. You correspond with ghosts. I correspond with a great deal. Ghosts are only a small part of my practice. This letter, Tyrion said, speaks of the Mad King's last seed hidden in the north. It is dated 3 moons before the sack. Varys was silent. 3 moons before the sack. Varys. Rhaegar was not yet dead at the Trident. Lyanna Stark was alive and under guard in a tower south of the Prince's Pass, and Brynden Rivers, somewhere under a weirwood tree that he had not left in 40 years, was writing a letter to you that speaks of the Mad King's last seed as a present fact. Yes. Varys. I have known, Varys said. He sat down. The old body was heavier than it had been. I have known since a little before the sack. I knew before any man in King's Landing knew. I did not pass it on. I did not act on it. I held it. I held it because I did not know what to do with it. I held it because I did not want to do to that child what other men would have done. I held it because, Targaryen, he looked at the wax, not at Targaryen, because I have outlived 2 kings I should not have, and I have helped make a 3rd I should not have, and I have been afraid some nights that I am precisely as much of a madman as the men I served, only with smaller hands. So I held it. I held it to see what came of it. And what came of it? Ned Stark rode back to Winterfell with his sister's son in his arms. Ned Stark was a very good man, Tyrion. Not a clever man in any sense you would understand the word. A good one. He raised that boy as his own. He refused to tell anyone whose the boy was. He never told Catelyn. He never told JON. He never told me, though I asked him once in a very careful way in a corridor, and he knew what I was asking, and he did not answer me. He let Catelyn hate him. He bore it. I watched him bear it. I thought for a time, Tyrion, that I was watching a better man than I had thought existed. Tyrion looked at him without saying anything. And now, Varys said, that better man is dead, and his son is marching south beside a woman who I had hoped would be a kind queen, and who some days I think is, and some days I think is a little like her father. And I have known for 30 years, and I am old, and I have not decided what to do with it. Varys, you leave letters to Dorne. I leave letters to Dorne. Yes, I have been considering what? Considering whether the realm is best served by a Targaryen queen and a Targaryen king who loves her, or by someone else entirely. I had considered Aegon. I had a pretender in mind. He is dead now, as you know, by the Golden Company's own hands, which was kind of them, because it saved me the trouble of being wrong in a way I was going to find hard to live down. Tyrion laughed without much humor. I had considered, Varys said, whether Jon Snow ought to know, and I had concluded I did not know enough to decide. The eunuch looked at his spider seal. A 3-eyed raven told me. I have not found such a one to be a reliable source. Men who see everything, Tyrion, see very little that is actionable. They know. They do not know what to do. The doing is left to the men who do not see clearly, which is all of us. He met Tyrion's eye at last. You must do what you must do. I have laid it before you. I have not laid it before the Queen, because to lay it before the Queen is to kill Jon Snow. She is not what you think she is, Tyrion. She is a little of her father. We are all a little of our fathers. Varys, does Jon know he knows? Tyrion's eyebrows went up. I believe his brother has told him, Varys said. The boy Bran, since the long night ended, watch him. Watch Jon, you will see. He walks differently now. He has not walked that way a week ago. And you are saying this to me because you are the only man in this camp with the stomach for it and the head for it, Tyrion Lannister. I am too old. Missandei is too young. Grey Worm is too loyal. Jorah is a pining bear. Davos is Davos. This is your weight. I give it to you. Do with it what you will. Tyrion sat very still. Varys, he said, if I had come an hour later, would you still be telling me this? If you had come an hour later, I would have been arranging my last move. I might not have had time to tell you. I am telling you because you came, and because I am spent, and because I want, before I am made to meet one of the gods I have never believed in, to have given a good thing into a hand I trust. Varys? Yes, don't die yet. Varys smiled. It was a tired smile. It was also a real one. I will try, my lord. Tyrion went out of the tent. The sun was going down behind the hills, and a line of fire ran along the clouds at the horizon. And for a moment, standing at the tent flap, Tyrion felt very small and very cold and very far from home. He walked a little way and stopped, and he looked up at the sky, and he said, to no one in particular, because he had no gods to say it to, and no one he was willing to pray to in any case, I am sorry, Father. I know I was not your son as you would have had me. I am sorry. Then he walked on and made his face into the face it must be, and went to find JON, who would not be hard to find tonight, because he would be wherever the silence in the camp went first. In Winterfell that same evening, Sansa Stark sat at her father's table in the Solar and read a letter for the third time. It had come in at dusk by a white-eyed raven, and the steward had been surprised by it, because white-eyed ravens were not a thing one saw. The ones they kept, and the ones they traded with the Citadel, had eyes that were black. But it had been in the cages with the others, and it had had a message tied to its leg, and the message said, "The boy you call brother is not the boy you think. His father was not the Dragon Prince. His father was the Dragon King. Your cousin is the Mad King's son. He marches south under a name not his. Bring this letter to Lord Tyrion Lannister and let him tell your brother so. A friend, unsigned." Sansa read it and folded it and unfolded it and read it again. She went to the fire and stood close to it. She did not put the letter in the fire. She did not tear it up. She turned it over and over in her hands. She thought about JON. She thought about the way he had been when he came home to her. She thought about what it meant that a white-eyed raven had brought her a letter with a truth in it, and what it meant that the truth had come to her, and whether the man who had sent it meant her to use it, or to be unbalanced by it, or to take it to Tyrion, as the letter said, and thereby to be made into a messenger of something that would tear a queen from a brother and set them against each other, she thought. She had learned to think now. She put the letter in a small locked box in her desk. She sat down. She wrote a letter of her own, short, to Tyrion Lannister, that asked him, without asking him, whether he had lately heard any interesting stories about birds. She sent it by an ordinary raven with an ordinary eye. She did not tell the steward where it was going. She sealed it with her own hand. Then she went out of the Solar and down the stairs and into the godswood to stand before the weirwood tree. The red leaves were thin in the spring wind. She looked up into the carved face. She did not speak. She stood there until the last light had gone, and then she stood there some more, and some of the weight of what she knew came out of her into the tree's roots, the way her father had taught her it could. Back in the camp on the King's Road, JON did not sleep well, but he did sleep. And that was something. Chapter 3. End Chapter 4. The fire we choose. The letter from Sansa came to Tyrion in the afternoon, wrapped around the leg of a bird with a black eye, and in the ordinary bobbing way of a raven that had nothing to hide. Tyrion read it in the doorway of his tent, and his mouth twitched once, and he went directly to Varys's tent, but Varys was not in his tent. He was walking with Missandei a little way down the line, a thing he often did, because he was courteous to her in the way an old man is courteous to a clever young one, and because he liked to know, each day, whatever she was thinking. Tyrion watched them a moment from a distance. Then he walked to Jon's tent. "Your sister writes me," he said when the flap closed behind him. "Which sister?" "You have only one who writes to me, Jon, and she does not, ordinarily." Jon put aside the whetstone he was working. Longclaw lay across his knees. He looked up. "Bran knows." Tyrion said. "Varys knows. Your sister, I deduce, from the cleverness of a note that pretends to be an inquiry about ornithology, now knows. And someone, who I do not yet have a name for, has made it his business to let all of them know by whatever means he can." Jon's hand went still on the whetstone. "That is very quick," he said. "I would be impressed by it if I were not so very unhappy about it. Yes, it is quick. It is a week, perhaps two. It means, Jon, it means the man who sent these letters has been waiting. He has been ready to send them. He knew about you already." "Bloodraven," Jon said slowly. "No. Bloodraven is in a tree and has been for a long while, and does not, so far as I understand the scrawlings of greenseers, have the hands to send letters to northern castles by ravens with uncommon eyes. Some other who was, if I had to guess, in the employ of the last Targaryen court at the time of the rebellion." Someone who saw the thing happen from the inside and kept it in his mouth for 30 years for a day that might profit him. Someone who would have, say, a network of white-eyed ravens he could call upon from across the narrow sea. Jon looked at him a long moment. Varys. No, I think not Varys. Varys has told me himself, and whatever his other crimes, he has not for a long time been a man who lies about the shape of his plots. He tells you what he is doing and trusts that you will not follow him. He is cunning in that way. He believes in his own cunning so much he forgets that other men can be cunning too. Then who? I do not know. Tyrion turned Sansa's letter in his fingers, but I mean to find out before we cross the next river, because a man who knows this and sends letters can also send letters to Cersei. And a man who sends letters to Cersei is, at the moment, the worst man in the world. Jon set the whetstone aside. He slid Longclaw into its sheath. He put his hand flat on the sheath and kept it there. "Say it to me," he said. "What do? We find the man. Or we make it not matter that the man exists. I would be pleased with either." Tyrion. Yes, you have not asked me. I do not need to ask you. It is a courtesy to you that I do not ask you. If you would prefer the courtesy to be less, I will be rude. Jon almost smiled. It was a thin smile, but it counted. You've been a friend to me. I have been a Lannister to you, Jon Snow. It is not often I am a friend. I intend to stay this one. Then be a friend also to her. I have been trying. It is harder than it looks. She has told me about you. About what you tried to tell her. About the things she did not want to hear. She has told me about me too, Jon. Tyrion's voice softened a degree. Often, at great length, with feeling. They both stood with that for a moment. Tyrion went to the tent flap, then paused. Jon, one more thing. Yes, when we find the man, he will try to leave the camp. He may try hard, he may have help. Do you want him taken alive, or do you want him taken? Alive if it can be done. If it cannot, then not. Jon's voice had no heat in it. But make it plain to your men that if it is a choice, he walks away with his wrists bound, not with a knife in his back. I want to hear him say the name he was going to sell. As you say. Tyrion went out. He found Jorah within the hour and spoke with him briefly, in a tone neither warm nor cold. Jorah, a man who had always loved to be of use, began to quietly walk the camp. That afternoon the host did not break camp at the ordinary hour. Daenerys had called a council in her pavilion, and it ran long, and by the time it had ended, the hour had been lost and the wagons had been ordered to stand. Inside the pavilion, seated on the carpets under the great silver cloth, Daenerys's captains and counselors had been asked to report on matters of supply, route, and expected resistance south of the Trident. Tyrion had opened. Missandei had translated for the Dothraki calls. Jorah had spoken of horse fodder. Grey Worm had spoken, not much. Jon had been late arriving and had said little. Varys had been present, sitting on a low cushion to the left of the throne chair she used, and had said only what was needful. When the meeting broke, Varys rose to go. Two of Daenerys's unsullied moved with him. So did Jorah, unostentatiously. They walked him across the camp to a small tent set by itself near the horse lines. He went without fuss. Jorah made him comfortable in it, set a guard on the door, and went to speak to the queen. Inside his own tent, Varys sat on a stool. He looked at his own hands as though they belonged to someone else. After a time he took out from an inside pocket a small scrap of parchment, and he held it over the candle, and it curled and charred. He dropped the char into a bowl. He did not try to escape. He had not tried to escape when the guards took him. Jorah came back to the pavilion and found Daenerys standing at her map table, looking down at the map without seeing it. Jon was there, and Tyrion and Grey Worm. She did not look up. He was carrying a letter. She said, in a voice very far away, "To Dorne. To Arion Martell, asking her to withhold her banners until a better candidate for the Iron Throne could be discovered. My Lord Hand tells me the better candidate was not to be me. My Lord Hand tells me the better candidate was to be my brother, whom my Lord Hand has now explained to me is not Rhaegar's son, but our father's. Her voice had the distance, Jon thought, of a woman who had just learned the number of dead she was walking over. He had heard women use that voice before over bodies. "Your Grace," said Tyrion. "Do not," Daenerys said. Tyrion said nothing. "I want him burned." Jon said, "Dany, I want him burned in the morning before the host. I want every man in this army to understand what happens to those who sell us." Jon stepped forward. "Dany, he has betrayed me twice in a month." "Dany, look at me." She did look at him. Her eyes were very bright. Her hands were very still on the map table. She was holding herself with an effort he could see, because he had learned recently what she looked like when she was holding herself so that nothing would spill. "I am looking at you," she said. "Tell me what you have to tell me. You will not burn him." "I will. You will not." The tent was very quiet. "We agreed," he said. She closed her eyes. She did not close them in surrender. She closed them the way a man closes his eyes to concentrate. When she opened them again, she was standing in a different posture, not a relaxed one, a different one. "What do we do with him then?" "We keep him. He is the best whisperer in the world. Keep him in a small tent with small guards and have him earn every mouthful of food he eats. Kill him if he ever tries to cross us again, but do not kill him now, not for this. Not while the men can say to each other, 'She burned spiders.' We are not that, Dany," we said. "I said, we said." She looked at Tyrion. Tyrion's face was carefully neutral. Grey Worm's face was also neutral, but his neutral had a narrower range than Tyrion's, and in his there was, Jon saw, approval. "Tyrion," she said, "Your Grace. What is your counsel?" "My counsel, Your Grace, is that your brother is wise. He offers you mercy that will cost you less than the mercy you intended." He paused. "And I would rather have Varys alive, at the point of a knife, than dead. His silences have always been more useful than any confession he could make. He would have lifted another candidate's banner over mine. He would have considered it. He has considered many things. He will consider many more. If you give him to me, I will set his considering to your purpose." Daenerys was silent. Jon watched her. She did not speak. She did not move for a long while. Then, very quietly, "Very well. Your Grace. I do not want to hear his name spoken in my presence until I send for him." "You will not, Your Grace." "And Jon?" "Yes. Walk with me, not now, later, when I have put my face back on." "Later." She went out of the pavilion, and Grey Worm went after her, and Tyrion and Jon were left standing over the map. "Well," Tyrion said, "that could have gone worse. It could have gone better, too." "Oh, certainly. But I have been in rooms with Targaryens before, and of the rooms I have been in, that one was—" He waved his hand, looking for the word in the middle. "I like middle rooms. They are the ones a man walks out of." Jon almost laughed. He did not. He looked at the map again. His finger found the point where they would cross the Blackwater and rested there. "Tyrion. Yes. When she goes to the throne, she is going to have to keep choosing. Every day. I cannot do that for her. No one can do that for her. She has you. She has me. She has Missandei. She has Grey Worm. She has, I think, you. And she has you in a way, Jon, that I do not quite have her, though I have known her longer. You are the mirror she can look into and see the thing she is fighting. That is a rare thing. I have had it with men in my life. It has saved me each time." Jon nodded. He took his hand off the map. He went out into the afternoon and stood between two tents and breathed. He did not walk with Daenerys that evening. She did not send for him. He did not go to her. In the night, he walked through the horse lines and he found Varys' tent. He stood outside it a long moment. He spoke quietly to the guard. He was not recognized in the dark at first, but when he was saluted. "Let me in. Wait for me." Inside, Varys sat on his stool. He looked up without surprise. "Jon Snow, Lord Varys. I had hoped you would come." Jon sat down on the floor across from him. The lamp between them shook when a moth hit the glass. Varys watched the moth with interest. "I wanted to ask you something," Jon said. "Ask. Was I supposed to be a king?" Varys tipped his head. "I mean, did you back when you were writing whatever it was you were writing to Bloodraven or to your agents, did you think at any point that the boy in the north should come south and be king?" Varys did not answer immediately. "I thought a great many things," he said finally. "I thought some weeks you should. I thought some weeks you should not. I thought some weeks you should be drowned in the sea quietly out of kindness to you. Mostly I thought I did not know." He looked at the moth. "You understand, when one does not know, the body does not rest well. I learned in the middle of my work not to rest. I learned to sleep in the small hours and to be awake the rest of the time. I have paid for that with my joints." Jon waited. "Your mother," Varys said slowly, "was kind to me. It is a very strange thing to say. But I saw her only once in a corridor when she was newly come to the Red Keep. I did not know then who or what she was. I saw her in a corridor, cold, very thin, with a child's face not yet grown into a woman's. And I saw your father step out of the door behind her. And I, Jon, if you ever loved me for any reason, love me for this, I saw her, and I went to her, and I asked her if she needed anything. Anything at all. I was a very minor servant. I had no power to do anything for her. And she looked at me and she said very quietly, 'I need nothing a eunuch can give me.' And she passed me in the corridor and went on. She was trying not to cry. I do not know if that is the memory you wished for. I thought you should have it." Jon's throat worked. He did not speak for a time. "Thank you," he said. "It is little." "It is not little." They sat a while. "You do not need to ask me if I will betray your sister again," Varys said. "I can tell you now I will try not to. I can promise no more. I am a man whose work has been, for 50 years, to consider every door in every room whether it is open or shut. I have been considering doors so long that I consider them even when I do not mean to, even when I am trying to be loyal. I cannot put that down. I am too old to put it down. If you want me alive for my uses, you will have to accept that I am, as I have always been, a poor man to trust. I have accepted it. Then I will do my best, which will be worse than you deserve and better than you would have had from another. That is enough. It is enough." Jon stood. "Lord Varys." "Yes. When this is done, if I come out the other side, I mean to ask you one more question. You will not like it. You will give me the answer if I ask it, and I will take it, and it will not be held against you. Do you agree to that?" "I do." "Good. Might I know the question now?" "No." Varys smiled his old tired smile, and Jon went out, and it was a while before he slept. 2 days after that, the host crossed the Red Fork at Riverrun, and the Freys, who had very few of them left worth the name, were cleared out of the Twin Towers in a morning's work, and Edmure Tully, whom the gods had spared long enough for this, rode out with 30 men in Tully colors to meet his niece's brother, who he had not ever met, in the open road. Edmure was gentle. Edmure had always been gentle. He kissed Sansa's letter to him when Jon handed it to him, and he wept, which was not a kingly thing but was, by all accounts, a Tully thing. Edmure rode with them south from the Red Fork. The army was 70,000 now with the Riverlands banners. They moved slower, but they moved with the authority of a country that has decided. Cersei moved too. She had not been idle. The Golden Company's main host had marched up to the northern edge of the Crownlands, and had set itself in a valley called Brindle's Cut, a place named by a half-mad septon centuries before for the strip of yellow grass that ran between the 2 wooded ridges. It was good ground for an ambush, and Sir Harry Strickland, who was the Golden Company's Captain General, had read his textbooks. He had also, it seemed, read Cersei's mind. The wagons in his camp were loaded with a cargo that did not look like what it was, and the cargo had come up the Blackwater by night on Euron Greyjoy's fastest ships, and the alchemists who rode with the company had laid it out in caches along the ridge sides and the wooded approaches, and had laced the central valley with jars of wildfire in pits covered with sod. The company had been told they would be fighting a classic set-piece engagement of cavalry on infantry. Some of them believed it. Most of them had fought under Strickland long enough to know that classic set-piece engagements were a thing you told your men about to keep them calm, and that a field laid with green fire was a field the company did not intend to be in when the fire went up. They had been told, very carefully, by Strickland, where the safe lines of retreat were. They did not tell the elephants. The elephants would not be retreating. Targaryen scouts found Brindle's Cut 4 days before the army reached it. They did not at first see the caches. They saw the company's positions, which were half hidden in the trees in the way a professional outfit hides things. They saw the tree line laid out as though for a classic engagement. They rode back, reporting. Targaryen listened, and then he went out and found JON. They want us in their valley. I see. I do not think we should go into their valley. No, I think we should go around, through the pass to the east. It will add 2 days, but it will ruin them. It will ruin them only if they cannot move their line fast. They cannot move their line fast. They have something in the ground. Otherwise they would not be holding still. Sir Harry Strickland is not a fool. He does not hold still. JON looked at the map. He looked at Brindle's Cut and at the pass to the east and at the river coming down through the second pass. He looked up. If they have wildfire in the valley. He said, they have wildfire also in their own camp. That is not something you leave far from you when you mean to use it. Where would they put it? Targaryen stared at him. In the trees. In the trees. If we took the trees first quietly, we could take the wildfire before the battle. If we took it, we could use it. We will not use it. We will not use it against men. We may use it to teach Strickland why one does not bring green fire to a battlefield. Targaryen laughed, a short, sharp laugh. Jon Snow, you are beginning to think like a Lannister. Do not tell her. She already knows. They took the trees that night. It was quiet work. Jon led it with 80 men of the Northern Rangers and 100 unsullied who could move on snow without crackling it. They went through the woods as if they had been raised in them, which most of them had not been. They found the first cache under a fallen log. They found the second cache where a tree had been, very neatly, cut down over the top of it. They found the third cache in a ravine. By dawn they had 34 caches. They stacked them carefully, a mile away in a clearing under guards. They did not touch the jars in the valley floor. Those, Jon had decided, he would not touch. He would not use them. He would not trust his own hand with them. He would leave them. In the morning, the Golden Company woke to find that its flanking woods had gone quiet in the night. Strickland's scouts came back wide-eyed. Strickland stood in the middle of his command tent and looked at the map and understood, slowly, that he had been outflanked in the woods without a fight. Understood that the ground behind him had been taken. Understood that his men who had been told the lines of retreat were open had, in fact, had those lines closed. Understood that the fires he had set in the valley were now a trap, but for whom was no longer clear. "Pull back," Strickland said. "Captain General," said his lieutenant. "We cannot pull back. The trees." "Pull back, Captain General. Sound the retreat." The retreat was sounded. It did not sound like a retreat for very long. It sounded within the hour like a rout. The Golden Company abandoned the valley and made for the North Road, and found the North Road, where it was not blocked by trees, blocked by Northern foot. They tried the river. The river had the Dothraki along the far bank. Yara Greyjoy's ships had come up the Blackwater in the night, and some of them were at the river already, and the rest were coming. Strickland did not panic. He tried a reverse up the slope, through the woods that had been his own. The first cache he reached had been moved, the second, the third. He understood in a flat, professional way that he had been taken apart. He ordered his remaining men to form square. JON, coming down the slope at the head of 500 northern men, saw the square form. He reined in. He did not charge. He held his men and watched. The square held against 3 light probes. It was a good square. The Golden Company were professional to the last. They were also not interested in dying for a Lannister queen they had been told would pay them in land none of them had ever seen. Strickland rode to the edge of his square and shouted. "Parley," JON rode out. They met in the no man's ground. Strickland was a big, sandy man with a hanging mustache, and he had a look of being tired of his life, and he had a look also of being a professional, which made him useful. JON rode out alone. He did not take Longclaw out of its sheath. He did not raise a hand. "Captain General, my Lord Snow, you are a long way from Essos." "I am. I was paid very well to be here. Some of the coin has turned, I find. Will you stand down?" "What are your terms?" "Lay down your arms. Leave your wildfire where it is. Ride south along the river road. Do not cross into the Crownlands for the rest of the year. If you do, I will find you, and I will not be in a parley mood. And if I refuse, I will be in a parley mood for 1 more minute, and then I will not be." Strickland looked at him a while. He looked at the hills. He looked at his men. He looked at the ridges where the trees were alive with the foot of northern archers. "Done," he said. "I take my men out by the river road. I give up no hostages. I pay no tribute. You do not pursue." "Done." They did not shake. Mercenaries and northern lords did not shake. Strickland nodded once and turned his horse. JON watched his back until he was inside the square. The square opened. The Golden Company marched out of Brindle's Cut before the sun was fully up, and no fires were lit, and no elephants walked with them, because JON had kept the elephants. Daenerys, on Drogon, had been above the pass all morning. She came down to him after the company was gone. She landed on a rocky ledge at the head of the pass, and Drogon folded his wings around her as she stepped off. She came down the rocks to meet him. "You took them without a charge." "I took them with a walk. JON, Dany, we are getting better at this." "Are we?" "We are." She looked at him. The wood smelled of pine and fresh earth and the sweetness that comes out of cut wood when sap runs. "You did not burn them." "No, I was ready to. I know." She let out a breath. I was angrier than I should have been. I am getting tired. The last week has been, I know." "Thank you, JON." "For what?" "For being the mirror." He did not answer. She nodded once and went back to Drogon and was gone. That night Tyrion found JON again. JON was at the wildfire caches, standing in the clearing they had been stacked into, watching the lanterns that his guards held at a careful distance. The jars were old. Some were chipped. Some had the alchemist's spidery marks on them in colors that had faded. He did not touch any of them. "We have a problem," Tyrion said. "We have another problem." "Yes, your informant, the man in our camp. You found him." "I found him." "Who?" Tyrion named a man. JON did not say anything. "I am bringing him to you," Tyrion said. "In a minute. I wanted you to know first before the walk." "Because, JON, it is not what you think. He has done it for a reason I would not have expected." "Say," Tyrion said. JON listened. He felt his mouth go very dry. He did not move. He did not speak for a long time after Tyrion had finished. "Bring him," he said at last. Tyrion went to bring him. And JON stood in the lantern light and watched and thought. And the thing in him that had once in a burned village wanted to show them how. The thing sat in him and waited and was for now under his hand. Chapter 4 and Chapter 5. The Red Keep break Sir Richard Lonmouth was a lean man of 60 with hair that had been black once, and was now a soot and salt color that did not flatter him. He had been in the camp under the name Rick of Stonehelm, a hedge knight who had signed on at Riverrun and ridden north of his orders more than once. He had been useful. He had also, Tyrion had discovered, been writing letters and paying riders, and placing ravens with unusual eyes in more cages than any hedge knight ought to afford. He walked into the clearing with his hands tied in front of him. He did not flinch at the lantern light. He did not look at Jon at first. He looked at the stacked jars of wildfire and wet his lips in a small professional assessment, as a man might look at a pot he did not want to boil over. "Sir Richard," Tyrion said, "my lord Hand. You have been, it seems, an industrious man. I have tried. Sit." He sat on the stump of a pine they had taken down to clear the ground. His hands rested on his knees. He looked for the first time at Jon. "Your Grace," he said. "I am not a grace. You are." Jon did not argue. He stepped forward so that Lonmouth could see him better. "Tell me who you are." "Sir Richard Lonmouth. Once the squire of Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, knighted by him, rode in his tourneys, stood at his shoulder when he was knight, when he was prince, and when he was a man very close to being a king. Your godfather in no sacred ceremony I ever attended, but in every thought I had after your birth." Jon did not move. "Rhaegar was not my father. No, but he died thinking he would raise you. He died with that thought clean in his head. I owe him the keeping of that thought, and I have." Lonmouth's voice was quiet. "I have kept it 30 years. You were at the Tower. I was. I rode with him from Dragonstone when he took your mother south. I stayed on the road below the tower while the Kingsguard held the upper stair, because I was not of the Kingsguard, and because the prince would not have me die in any man's war but my own. I was within a day's ride when Ned Stark came, and when Went and Dane and Hightower did not ride out again. I saw your father on the horse, and I saw his sister swaddled in his cloak. I knew what he carried. I waited in the hills a week. I did not accost him. I thought about it. I chose not to. The prince had told me what Ned Stark was, and what Ned Stark would do, and that I should trust Ned Stark above any man in the kingdoms if I could not reach the prince himself. I trusted him. I watched you ride north. I went east. I have not lived in Westeros for most of the years since. Yet you came back. I came back when the Queen's sails were first seen in Slaver's Bay. I came back when I thought I would see what the world would try to make of you. I have been in this camp by one name or another since Riverrun. I have read rooms. I have written letters. I have sent them out by old birds of my own breeding. I have told a very few people the truth of your birth, not many, your grace, only the ones I thought could be made to use it well. You told Sansa. I did. You told Cersei. I did. I did not do it because I love Cersei Lannister. I did it because a queen in the Red Keep with a secret in her pocket becomes unpredictable, and an unpredictable Cersei is a Cersei who makes mistakes. I wished her to make mistakes. Lonmouth's gaze was level. She has, and Varys. Varys I did not have to tell. Varys told me 30 years ago in a corridor on Dragonstone that if he saw the child alive he would not raise his hand against it. He has kept his word in his peculiar way. Jon was quiet. "Sir Richard," he said. "Why? You are asking me why I would have wished you on the throne." "Yes." "Because the prince did not want his father to rule the realm, and his father did. Because the prince did not want Robert Baratheon to rule the realm, and Robert did. Because I owe the prince one boy he thought he would raise. I do not know what kind of king you would be, Jon Snow. I do not know whether it is wise to put the Mad King's son on the Mad King's throne. But the prince," his voice got very tired, "the prince would have loved you. I cannot put the prince on the throne. I can put on the throne the boy he loved. You are a fool, Sir Richard." "I am a loyal man, your grace. I am a fool of the kind only loyalty makes. I know what I have done. I am not sorry, but I am not proud. I would have kept your secret until I saw a day to use it, and the day came, and I used it, and I have now been caught, and I will take what comes. You would have given my sister to ruin." Lonmouth's face tightened. "I had hoped she would be moved aside without ruin. I am old enough to know the difference between what I hope and what I set in motion. I have been fooling myself. The truth is I preferred you. The preference was in me before I had a reason for it. I am not the first man to arrange reasons around a preference, Your Grace. I will not be the last. Jon looked at the wildfire. He looked at the man on the stump. You want to live. I want to be useful. That is not the same thing. It is my version of it. Targaryen. Yes, hold him under guard. Do not bind his hands more tightly than you must. Put him with Aerys. They will be an instructive pairing. Feed them the same food. Let them speak. Listen to what they say. Do not kill either of them until I say, Your Grace. Tell the Queen. Targaryen nodded. He came forward and helped Lonmouth to his feet. The old knight looked once more at Jon. You look like him, you know. Like who? Not the prince. Lonmouth shook his head. You have the prince's cheek a little. The chin is your mother's. The eyes are your father's. The real one. He had dark eyes when he was young. Nobody remembers that. Everybody thinks Targaryens all have purple eyes like dragons out of books. His were dark. I could never decide when I was at court whether I was looking at you now or at him then. I decided at last, a year after the sack when I was lying drunk in a tavern in Mur, that I would look at the man you became and decide then. Your Grace. A small nod. I am deciding now. You are yours. Lonmouth went with Targaryen into the dark. Jon stood alone in the clearing with the wildfire. He felt in his chest something that was not the voice he was learning to know, and not the man he was learning to be, but something that might have been a child, briefly, being spoken to by a godfather. He breathed once. He turned his back on the jars. He walked. That night he did not sleep. He walked the horse lines. He walked the unsullied camp. He walked the northern camp, and he was saluted, and he saluted back, and he walked on. At dawn, he came to the edge of the camp where Ghost had curled himself against a fallen oak, and he sat down by the wolf and put his hand into the fur at his neck and closed his eyes. He did not see Aerys. He saw, instead, a weirwood tree, very old, on an island in a wide black pool. A boy sat against the tree. The boy was himself as he had been at 14, and the boy looked at him across the pool, and the boy smiled. Hello, said Jon. Hello, said Jon. I came to tell you something, said one of them. Neither could be sure who spoke. I will be all right. Will you? I think so. I will try. If I fail, I will fail on my own. The boy against the tree nodded. The red leaves moved once. Ghost in the dream put his head on the boy's knee. The boy put his hand on Ghost, and the boy and the man and the wolf were, for a breath, all the same thing. Jon woke in the gray light. Ghost was awake. Ghost lifted his head and looked at him, and the wolf's red eye was untroubled. It was that same morning while Jon walked and dreamed that Daenerys dreamed too. She dreamed her father. He had sat at the foot of her bed since she was a girl. This time she saw him. He was tall and too thin, and his hair was a wild white cloud around his face, and his nails were yellow and very long. His face was old and young both, as the faces of dead kings are. He turned to her. He did not, for the first time, sit with his back to her, and he looked at her, and the madness in his eyes was terrible. It was also not entirely there. It was in the eyes like dust in a room, and the room itself was weeping. I loved you, her father said. You never met me. I loved the idea of you. That is not love. It was all I had. His hands lay in his lap, long and yellow. I was never a good man, Daenerys. I was never a good man. I wanted to be. I was not. I had a good son, and he died before I could become what he already was. I had another boy. I could not raise him. He was taken from me, which was, perhaps, the last mercy the world ever gave anyone in our family. Do not be what I was. I am not. Some days you are, I know, my girl. His eyes were wet. My girl, burn no city. If you must be a queen, be the kind I would have hated. Do not be the kind my son would have been ashamed of. She said, I will try. He nodded. He turned away again. She watched his bent back for a long time until sleep released her. When she woke, she did not weep. She washed her face. She braided her hair herself without calling Missandei, and she went out of her tent into the dawn. JON was already waiting. He did not speak when she came to him. She did not speak. They looked at each other as brother and sister look at each other when neither has needed to speak first in a very long time. She touched his sleeve. He nodded once. They broke camp at dawn. They were a day and a half from King's Landing. Cersei had prepared. She had been preparing since Robert took her. She had been preparing since her father put a crown on her 7-year-old head for a jape. She had been preparing since a woman in a tent in the Western Hills told her she would be queen, and then she would not, and then another would be prettier, and she would outlive her children. She had prepared for this. She had prepared for a man to ride up to her walls. She had prepared for 2 men to ride up to her walls. She had prepared lately for 2 dragons. She was a woman who did not panic. She panicked only in front of her own mirror quietly, and then she washed her face, and she returned to the map. The letter from Sir Richard, delivered to her by way of a man who was on the way to the free cities with, it turned out, her money and no intention of collecting the rest, had given her the knowledge and the lever. Knowledge. Jon Snow was the Mad King's son. Lever. She had that knowledge and he did not yet know she had it. She planned to use it. She had plans for all her levers. She was generous with her inventory. She walked the battlements with Qyburn at her side. The city was quiet below her and quieter with every hour. Euron Greyjoy was moored at the mouth of the Blackwater with 30 ships. The Golden Company was lost. That bad news had arrived in the small hours, by a rider with a wound in his side who had not lived past the delivery, but the company had served its purpose. It had slowed the host. It had thinned the hours. The real trap was not at Brindle's Cut. It had never been at Brindle's Cut. It was here. The caches, she said, all placed, your grace. Signals. Along the eastern wall, your grace, a man at each. They wait for the horn from the Tower of the Hand. Who is the man at the tower? Sir Gregor, your grace. Good. She looked east. The sun was coming up over the narrow sea. It was a red sun that morning. The rumor in the city would be that the gods were speaking. Cersei did not believe in the gods in any way that would have pleased a Septon, but she approved of weather that helped her. One more thing. Yes, your grace, Jaime. Qyburn did not answer because nothing was a question yet. When he comes, and he will come today or tomorrow, let him through. Do not kill him. Do not tell him I said so. Tell the guards whatever you must tell them. I want him to come to me. He will try to kill you, your grace. He will not. He may. He will not. Qyburn bowed, and Qyburn. Yes, your grace. When I give the signal, whenever I give it, I want the sept to go first. The sept of Baelor, your grace. No, the great sept is already gone. I mean the one under the dragon pit, the new one. The one where the faith has been rebuilding. I want it to go first. I want the smell of it in the wind when they come. Yes, your grace. She turned. She went in. Outside the city by nightfall, the host of Daenerys Targaryen made its camp along the hills above the Kingsroad. The river ran below them to the west. The city lay 8 miles south, a mass of walls and towers in the dimming air, with the red keep a red-brown weight above it, and beyond the city the sea. Jon and Daenerys stood on the ridge together and looked south. We offer terms, Daenerys said. We offer terms. She will refuse. She will. But we offer them. What will they say? That we have come to depose the usurper Cersei Lannister, that we will spare the city if the gates are opened, that we will spare her life if she surrenders in person by morning, that if she does not, we will take the city by force, but that we have no quarrel with its people. And we mean that. We mean every word, Jon, Dany. If she does not surrender, we take the city. If we take the city, there will be fighting in the streets. Men die. Women die. Children die. That is the truth of every city taken. We minimize it. We target the walls and the castle. We do not fire the streets. We do not burn the city. The dragons. The dragons for walls and gates and towers. Nothing else. If Drogon smells a wildfire cache, he avoids it. You do not strike where fire is laid. You let Jaime disarm it or you lose a block no more. Jaime will come to us tonight. She looked at him. You are sure? I am sure. Tyrion has sent a man. He has asked Jaime. Tyrion is asking Jaime to betray his sister to save his city. Tyrion is asking Jaime to be who Jaime became when he killed the last king who lit a fire. Jaime has spent 30 years punishing himself for that one act. He has the chance tonight to do the same act again and call it the same thing. He will come. Daenerys looked out at the darkening city. She was quiet a long time, and me, you do what you do. I do not burn, you do not burn. If I feel it, I will be there. She put her hand in his. It was a sister's hand. It was also a hand that had been queen of 3 cities and Khaleesi of 1 people and mother of 3 dragons, and the last rightful heir of a line that had ridden on wings since before the doom. It was a hand that could take the world apart, and she had decided again that she would not. If I fail, you will stop me. If I fail, you will stop me. They stood with that. Then Daenerys nodded once and went to the pavilion to sign the terms. Jaime came in at midnight. Bronn was with him. Bronn had a black eye. Jaime had a rag around his knuckles. They came into the pavilion without fanfare. Jaime had been in this army's path for a week, and everyone in the tents knew who he was, and a path had been, quietly, made for him. Tyrion embraced him, and they did not speak. Bronn looked at Tyrion and at Jaime and said, I would like a cup of wine. I have been riding with this one for 3 days, and he does not speak, and he does not sing, and he is very difficult to travel with. Tyrion poured him wine. Jaime, Tyrion, can you do it? Yes. You are sure? I am sure. Jaime's voice was quiet. I do not want to do it. I will do it, brother. Tyrion, whatever happens, whatever you have to do, you come back. I will try. That is not good enough. That is what I have. Tyrion looked at the floor. Very well. The terms went in by a rider with a white flag at dawn. They were refused before the rider had dismounted. Cersei did not deign to read them in the street. She ordered them burned at the city gate in sight of the rider by a man with a torch. The rider rode back. Daenerys mounted Drogon. Jon mounted Regal. The sun was already high. They did not fly at first. They stood, the 2 of them, on their dragons on the ridge, and the dragons curled their long necks and looked down at the city, and the city looked up at them, and it was as if the city and the dragons were taking each other's measure. A bell rang, very faint, at the sept of the Mother. Another rang closer at a watchtower. Smoke began to rise from the alchemists' pits. Someone had been told to show the caches, and show them they did. A thin green tendril here and there on the walls, deliberately visible, a message. Surrender us the city, it said, or find out what fire we have kept for you. Jon looked at Daenerys across the gap between dragons. Walls, he said. Gates, towers. Walls, gates, towers. Go. They went. Drogon took the gate of the gods. Regal took the iron gate. The walls split open in 2 places, and the Dothraki were through before the guard in the towers had understood what had happened. Northern Foot went into the breach on the gate of the gods. The Unsullied went into the iron gate. Yara's ships came up the Blackwater and burned Euron's fleet at anchor. Euron himself fought like a drowned man, which in a sense he was, and was taken by a Greyjoy axe on his own deck and died laughing and cursing by turns. Yara put his head on a pike and sailed on. In the city, the citizens ran. They ran into their homes. The bells rang. Septas in the small septs read prayers to the mother and the maiden. Men who had been on the walls a month ago for Cersei's coins slipped out of their mail and went home to their wives. A very few men with long memories came out of their houses with their grandfathers' spears and formed small knots in the streets, and attacked the Unsullied and died. The Unsullied closed around them and did not take prisoners, because the Unsullied did not take prisoners. But they did not loot, they did not rape, they did not set fires. They marched in column and they broke lines and they moved on. Clegane Bowl happened on the steps of the Red Keep. Sandor had come up with the northern column. An unlikely piece of luck, or an unlikely piece of choice. And he had walked up the city streets with a long axe on his shoulder and a grim calm that had made the Unsullied step aside. He arrived at the steps of the keep as his brother, who had been sent out of the keep by Cersei's orders to meet the attackers, was coming down them. They met on the 12th step, with the pillar of the first balcony above them, and they fought without words. It was a short fight by the reckoning of fights. It was a long one by the reckoning of the Hound. When it was done, Sandor Clegane lay on the steps with his brother's blade stuck in him from shoulder to hip, and his brother lay a step below him without his head, because Sandor had, at the end, found a small gap at the lip of the helm and driven his dagger in, and twisted. And the mountain had gone down on one knee and then not known how to get up again, and Sandor had, as his brother's head left his body, whispered something that no man heard. The Hound died where he had fallen. He did not die quickly. He did not die slowly. He died for him about right. Arya Stark, who had come with the host without saying goodbye to anyone and without telling anyone she was coming, was the one who sat with him at the end. She held his hand. He did not say much. He said the 3 words he had always said to her, which were, "Wolf girl, go." She did not go. Jaime went through the city by a route he had not used in 20 years. He had a man's cap on and a cloth over his golden hand. He went by the cookhouse under the Tower of the Hand, and by the narrow passage behind the Septon cellar, and by the stair no one used any more, and he came up, at last, into the corridor that ran beneath the pyromancer's signal post in the eastern wall. There was a man there. The man had been told to wait for Qyburn's horn. He was drinking from a skin. When Jaime came, he did not recognize him at first, and then he did and stood, and Jaime killed him with a short thrust of his left hand, because Jaime had learned to kill with his left, if not to love it. The horn was on a peg. Jaime took it. He broke it over his knee. He went on. He cleared 3 more signal posts before the horn went up at the Tower of the Hand. By then he was in the throne room and his sister was there, and the throne was where the throne had always been. "Jaime," said Cersei. "Cersei, you came back to me." "I did." "The horn." "No." She closed her eyes. She opened them. "Why?" "Because you would have killed the city." "The city," she said, "is mine to kill." "No," he said. "It was never yours. The throne is not yours. The crown is not yours. You borrowed them from a child who is dead. You have borrowed a great deal. The books have come due." "Jaime," Cersei, "I am with child." He looked at her. He had loved her. He had loved her his whole life. He had loved her as one loves a shape one has chosen for one's love to take, because no other shape has been offered, and the mind insists that love be given somewhere. He had loved her because his father hated her, and because his mother had died and she was the closest thing, and because when he was 13 she had climbed into his cot one night and put her hand on his mouth and whispered she would always be. He had loved her badly and he had loved her well. He had loved her. "Then name the child," he said. "I do not know, Cersei." "I do not know." She did not. The pregnancy had always been partly a story she had told to keep him. She did not know if it had been. She did not know now. She was standing on the dais of a throne that her grandfather had told her about when she was 6, and her brother had come to take her off it, and she was 44 years old, and she had not known until this minute how tired she was of all of it. "Jaime." "Cersei, I loved no one else." "I know. Do you love me?" "Yes. Also I have come to stop you." She smiled a little. It was a small, real smile. "It is an odd family, ours," she said. She moved very fast, a Lannister woman still, and she had a dagger in her hand before he had seen it come. And she moved on him, and he caught her wrist with his left, and he did not twist. He held. She strained against him for a moment. Then she did not. She let the dagger fall. It clattered on the step. He did not hear it. He was holding her. He had been, for a while, holding her. "It's done," he said against her hair. "Yes," she said, "do it. I am not going to kill you, you must. I am not going to kill you, Cersei, Jaime. I am taking you out of this room. You will stand before your brother. You will stand before your judges. You will not sit this throne again. You will not die today, not by me." She wept. He held her. The dragons did not burn the city. Drogon and Rhaegal circled over the walls as the city fell and landed on the seaside tower of the Red Keep. Daenerys and Jon dismounted. They came down the stair. The Unsullied were already in the keep. Grey Worm was at the foot of the stair. Jorah came up to meet them with blood on his cloak that was not his. Targaryen, breathless, came last, because short legs went last. But his face was lit as Jon had never seen it, with relief, with grief, with something like astonishment that he had lived to see this and not the alternative. Jaime came out of the throne room with Cersei. Daenerys stood at the door. She looked at Cersei. Cersei looked at her, with eyes that were neither defeated nor triumphant, but simply the eyes of a woman who had been, for the last hour, watching a world change around her without her say-so. "Your Grace," said Cersei. "Sister," said Daenerys with that faint cold smile she had for enemies. "You should call me that, I cannot. Then call me nothing." Daenerys nodded to Grey Worm. "Take her, gently, put her with the Kingsguard cells, post 4 only. I do not want an accident." Grey Worm went with Cersei. Jaime stood at the door with his left hand trembling at his side, and Tyrion went to him, and they did not speak. And Tyrion, in the end, simply took Jaime's hand in his own too and held it there. Jon walked past them into the throne room. The throne was as it had been, black iron, 1,200 blades. The old dragon fire welds at the base like scabs 1,000 years old. He stood before it. He did not sit. He did not touch it. He looked at it a long moment. He thought of his mother. He thought of Aerys at the window with the torch. He turned. Daenerys was at his shoulder. "We have it. We have it." "What now?" she said. "Now," he said, "we do the hard part." Outside, far down below in the city, a child cried somewhere and then stopped. The bells had stopped ringing. The sun was past noon. The city stood. Chapter 5, end chapter 6. The weight of a crown. The 3 weeks after the city fell were the strangest Jon had ever lived. The air over King's Landing did not smell the way a taken city ought to smell. It smelled of cook fires and horses and wet stone. There were not columns of smoke. There were not the wails of rape and the clean, sour stink of fire done to houses. The small folk came out of their doors, slowly at first, and found Northern Foot patrolling the streets and Unsullied at the corners. And they went to the wells and drew water. And they went to the bakers and bought bread. And they argued about the price of bread, because in King's Landing, after any calamity, the argument about the price of bread was the first real sign that the world was still a world. Jon walked those streets in his first week, not in his coat of arms but in a plain brown cloak, with Ghost at his heel and 2 of his Northerners at a tactful distance. He listened. Women looked at him, and some knew who he was and some did not, and he spoke to the ones who spoke to him. He took questions he did not have the authority to answer, and he passed them to Tyrion, who answered most of them and made the other men answer the rest. The city came back to itself. Not easily, not quickly, but truly. Daenerys took up residence in Meager's holdfast, not the throne room. She slept in a room that had been a guest chamber rather than the royal apartments. She gave orders standing, not sitting. She did not mount the Iron Throne. Tyrion noticed this. Jon noticed this. The lords of Westeros, when they began to arrive, also noticed this, for the lords did arrive. Word had gone out the day after the city was taken. A great council to settle the realm was called, and the word was that every ruling lord and every claimant's representative must present himself in the flesh. It was the sort of call a weak queen would not have dared make, and the lords knew it, and that was perhaps why most of them came. There were exceptions. Edmure Tully came in his niece's stead, bringing Sansa's seal and Sansa's instructions and Sansa's apologies for not coming herself, though Sansa's apology was, as the letter read, not complete, in that she is not sorry for being a queen already. Tyrion read that line aloud twice and laughed the second time. JON Royce came for the veil, with Robin Arryn beside him quieter than anyone remembered him. Gendry Baratheon came, newly legitimized, who had been given Storm's End by Daenerys on her way up the road, and who had arrived at the city with a small, careful retinue of knights. Aerion Martell came for Dorne, with 3 men and 1 maester and a smile that promised nothing. Yara Greyjoy sat the Seastone chair at last, and she came. Samwell Tarly came, at Tyrion's summons, representing the Citadel in an unofficial way. Brienne of Tarth came up from Storm's End with Gendry. The northern lords came up too, some by the Kingsroad with Edmure's train, some by ship, because the ships had begun to sail again. Even Howland Reed came, a small shadow of a man who had not left Greywater Watch in 20 years, and who sat on a stool at the edge of the dais and looked at Jon with a look Jon could not quite read. On the morning of the great council, Jon dressed himself alone. He had dressed in a coat of white wool over a black jerkin. He had put on the doublet that Sansa had sent him, a stark gray with a wolf's head stitched small at the collar, her message, plain enough. He wore Longclaw at his hip. He wore no crown and no circlet. He wore his hair tied back with a leather thong. He looked at himself in the polished copper that served him for a mirror, and for the first time in many years he did not flinch at what he saw. He saw Ned Stark's son. That was what he saw. He let himself see it. He let himself believe it. He went down to the throne room. The throne was still there. It had not been touched. The great hall was not set up as a throne room this morning. Tyrion had seen to that. The Iron Throne stood in its place, but Daenerys' seat was a high-backed chair at the foot of the dais, set on a line with the chairs of all the other great lords and ladies of the realm. She sat in it in plain black wool. Her hair was braided simply. She wore a silver chain with a small pendant at her throat. She looked less like a queen taking homage and more like the first speaker at a dinner where every guest would be given the floor. They began at noon. Tyrion opened. He spoke briefly, and well. Tyrion was a man who had spent his life preparing to speak briefly, and well in front of rooms he was sure would hate him. And he explained that the realm had been taken, and that the question of what the realm would be from this day forward was open. He explained that every lord present had a voice. He explained that no decision would be taken by force, or by dragon, or by acclamation of the mob. He explained that this was not how such things had been settled in Westeros before, but that Westeros had lately had enough of the way things had been settled before, and might profit from trying something new. A few lords laughed. A few lords did not. Aerion Martell smiled her small, unreadable smile. Gendry Baratheon watched with the absorbed attention of a man who knew he was out of his depth and intended to learn his way out. Sam Tarly spoke next. He had been made to by Tyrion, who had insisted that the Citadel's voice, such as it was, be heard, and that Sam was the closest thing the Citadel had sent. Sam explained in that stammering, careful way of his that people underestimated that he had been raiding. He had been reading in the archives of the Red Keep, which were not where the best records were, and also in the archives at Old Town, which were, and he had some things to say about the ancestry of various claimants. He listed the claimants as the scholars in Old Town understood them. He listed Daenerys, Princess Daenerys of House Targaryen, last child of King Aerys Roman II. He listed Stannis' deadline, which was not a claim. He listed Gendry, now Lord Baratheon, with a much lesser claim. He listed 3 old houses who had old claims that they had not pressed in 100 years. He listed at the end Jon Snow. "Jon Snow," said Sam, looking down at his notes, is by the word of his brother Brandon Stark, who is the 3-eyed raven of the children's old word, the son of Lyanna Stark. His father, Sam paused. He looked at Jon. Jon nodded once. His father, said Sam, was not Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, as I had once myself believed. His father was King Aerys Roman II Targaryen. Jon Snow is the bastard son of the last king to sit the Iron Throne before Robert Baratheon. He is the queen's half-brother, not her nephew. The hall, which had, until that point, been merely attentive, went fully still. Jon could hear, very clearly, the sound of a horse somewhere outside shaking its head. He could hear, inside, the small noise of Tyrion's chain against his doublet. He could hear Arion Martell's breath catch, very small once. "I will speak," Jon said, standing. Tyrion nodded. He gave him the floor. Jon came down from the dais. He did not stand on the platform. He stood in the space at the foot of the throne, among them. "Every word Samwell has said," he began, "is true. I learned what he has said in the weeks between the long night and the taking of this city. I did not learn it before. I would have told you earlier if I had known earlier. I will tell you now in front of you all, because a realm is owed plain dealing, and because I do not think I can sit in any chair in this hall if I sit it under a name that is not mine." He did not pause for effect. He had no interest in effect. "I did not kill my father." He let that sit. "I never knew my father. I never would have known my father. My father was a man who burned his enemies in their armor because he liked the smell of it. He strangled an old man with a chain in this room. He did it in front of an audience. He did it in front of his own son." Jon's voice did not shake. "I am the son of a man it would not have been a grief to kill. I know this about myself now. I have made my peace with it. I will not pretend to you that I am a child who knew only half his parents. I will not pretend to you that I am a man the gods have given a clean line of descent. I am the bastard son of a Stark girl who did not live to raise me, and a Targaryen madman who should not have been allowed near her. I was raised in Winterfell by my uncle, who I will call my father until I am put in the ground." He looked along the row of seated lords. "I will not claim the Iron Throne." The hall held its breath. "I could," he said. "I have thought about it. I have had men among you who, without my asking, would have put me on it. I am told the small folk will say my name if it is put to them. I do not take the point lightly. I understand that by the laws of this realm as they stood in my father's day I would, if anything, have the first claim on this chair. I understand that my blood, however badly got, is blood. I understand that my sister—" He met Daenerys' eye and she held it without flinching. "My sister, who has come farther than any of us to sit in this room, would not oppose me if I asked. I know these things. I have said them to myself in the dark of every night for 3 weeks. I will not claim it. I could not sit in any chair in this hall that my father sat in without hearing him, and I will not give a second life to a man who does not deserve the first he was given." He stopped. He breathed. "I renounce any right I have to this throne. I renounce it freely in the sight of every lord and lady here. I renounce it in the sight of the gods if any of them are watching. I renounce it forever. If I have sons, they shall not have it. If I have daughters, they shall not have it. I give it, with all the blessing I can give, to the queen you have here. If you will not have her, if this council will not have her, then I give it to whoever you choose. But I will not be a candidate. I will not be a name any of you may write down." He stepped back. He sat down again. There was a silence that was not the silence of a hall making up its mind. It was the silence of a hall that had been knocked, politely, off its feet. Then Sansa's letter was read by Edmure. He read it in his quiet Tully voice, without flourish. To the lords of the 7 kingdoms in council assembled, from Sansa Stark, Lady of Winterfell, Queen in the North by acclamation of her banners and the free folk of the North, greetings. I have read the letter of Lord Tyrion Lannister. I send my uncle in my stead. I have 3 things to say to you. First, the North has not been part of the 7 kingdoms in practice for 2 years and will not be in the future. We have fought our own dead. We have buried our own dead. We have kept our own men at home for a winter that was not the 7 kingdoms' winter. We will keep our own men at home from here on. We will swear no oaths to any lord or any lady south of the neck. Second, we will trade with the South, and we will fight beside the South when there is reason, and we will send our sons to your maesters, and we will take your daughters at our feasts. But we will govern ourselves. Third, I do not expect you to make of this a quarrel. I expect you to take it as it is, which is an old thing written in letters as if it were new. I wish your counsel well. Sansa Stark. Edmure folded the letter. He set it down. He did not add anything. He was a Tully. He did what he was told. Tyrion picked the letter up and handed it to Daenerys. She read it. She sat with it a moment. She handed it to JON. JON read it. He handed it back. Your Grace, JON. The North has asked for nothing we cannot give. No, I would give it. You would. And you. Daenerys looked out at the hall. She looked at the lords of the South, old men who had sat at Robert's table, middle-aged men who had grown up under usurpation, younger men who had never known a king before 20. She looked at Gendry, who was leaning forward a little, interested. She looked at Aerys, whose smile was very faint. She looked at Yara, who was eating an apple. She looked at Edmure. She looked at Howland Reed, who was watching her the way he had been watching JON, a small, clean watchfulness. I will give the North its independence, she said. I will not contest it. I will at noon tomorrow sign my name to a paper that says so. Any lord here who wishes to dispute me may speak now. No one spoke. JON Royce cleared his throat and spoke. I am for it, your Grace, if the North is yours to give. I think we have had enough of kings wanting every acre. The North is yours, Daenerys said. It was always yours. I am only writing down what was true. JON Royce bowed. Now, said Tyrion, the throne. They stared at him. The throne, said Tyrion again. Itself, the object, the chair. Daenerys looked at him with the small, faint smile that meant she had already guessed what he was going to say and was willing to be surprised by something else if he had it. I propose, said Tyrion, that we melt it. There was a noise. It was not a protest. It was not applause. It was the noise of a great many lords who were thinking at the same time. Not to nothing, said Tyrion. To something, we melt it. The iron in it is very good iron. We make of it, I do not know. A chain, perhaps, an arch, a set of doors. Something that will be used every day by every person who comes into this castle. Not a seat only. Something to pass under, something to pass through. A king who sits does not remember the floor. A king who passes under a thing remembers it every day. Let us give our queen a doorway. Gendry Baratheon, who had not spoken all day, was leaning forward now with his mouth open a little. He was a smith. He was hearing a commission. He was calculating a weight. Daenerys said, I would like that, your Grace. I would like a queen's seat not of iron, and not made by melting my enemies, and not set in a room where men must kneel to speak to me. I would like a round table in a round room with no head to it and all my lords around it. Let us make a round table. Let us melt the iron, and let us make the doors, and let us make the chairs, and let us make whatever a smith can make of so much iron, and let us have a round table in a round hall, and let us meet there. Your Grace, call me queen, she said, more softly. But do not call me queen of the Iron Throne. Call me queen of the 6 kingdoms, and the Iron Throne shall go into a foundry, and I shall sit in a chair no one has died to give me. The lords stood. Not all of them, most of them. The ones who stood were the ones who had come into this hall expecting to lose and who were, some of them for the first time in years, finding themselves winning something. Sam Tarly was standing. Howland Reed was standing. Edmure was standing. Gendry was standing and grinning and looking at Daenerys like a man who had been asked on a date by a queen and did not quite know how to take it. JON Royce said, "I will drink to that, your grace. I will drink to it with any wine you care to name. I may begin in about a quarter of an hour." Daenerys laughed. In the end, it took days more. There were other things to settle. There was the question of the crownlands, and whether the city would be ruled by the queen directly or under a lord. There was the question of the wildlings, and whether they would be given land south of the wall or kept where they had been. There was the question of the small folk of King's Landing, many of whom had lost homes in the fighting and would need rebuilding at crown expense. There were the two prisoners. Cersei went to the Silent Sisters for life. She did not, to everyone's surprise including James' protest. Jaime took a post at Casterly Rock as Warden of the West, with Tyrion to remain in the capital as the Queen's hand. The brothers fought about it for a whole afternoon and laughed at themselves that night. Varys was given leave to retire to the Free Cities, watched, but alive. Sir Richard Lonmouth was pardoned by JON and given leave to return to his homestead in Stonehelm. He refused. He asked for a post instead. He asked to serve the Queen. She took him into her household as a master-at-arms, because she did not trust him entirely and because, as she said to JON later, "A man who wants to serve you is more useful at your elbow than in your forest." JON agreed. On the last morning of the council, Daenerys sat on a simple wooden chair in a chamber that had not yet been made round, but that she had ordered turned into such. She sat with JON across a table that was not yet round either, and they drank the very bad coffee the Dothraki had taught her to drink, and they had the talk they had been putting off for 3 weeks. "You are going north." "Yes." "When?" "Tomorrow morning." "You have not said goodbye to anyone." "I have said goodbye to Gendry. I have said goodbye to Sam. I have said goodbye to Ser Jorah. I am not anyone." No, he did not drink his coffee. He set the cup down. He looked at her. "Dany, JON, we will see each other. Yes, not often. No, if you need me, I will send. I will come. I know. If I need you, I will come." They sat with that. The sun through the high window moved a half-inch on the wall. A raven somewhere in the rookery complained about breakfast. "JON. Yes, thank you for what? For being what I needed you to be. You came south as my equal. You leave as my brother. I cannot, I think, tell you what it has been to me. I have never had a family. I have had men who called themselves my blood. I have not had a brother, not like this, Dany. I want you to know, I know, I am going to be a good queen. I know. I am going to be a good queen, JON. I am going to be the best queen this realm has had. I will not be Rhaegar's queen. I will not be Aegon the Conqueror's queen. I will be the queen after them both, the one who cleans up the things their dreams made, and I will do it without burning anything I do not have to burn. Will you watch me? I will watch you. From the north. From the north. If I fail, I will tell you how, in a letter, in plain writing." She laughed, and it was a laugh he had not heard in a year. Not a raven with a white eye. Not a raven with a white eye. Good. He left the next morning. He did not take a great retinue. He took Tormund and 10 men of his northern guard. He took Ghost, who had slept that last night at the foot of his bed and had not left it even to eat, which was the closest Ghost came to making a point. He took a saddlebag of letters that Daenerys had given him to deliver along the way. He took nothing that had been made from the melted throne, because the smiths had not finished the work yet, and because he had refused more than once to be given any small memento of it. He rode out of the city by the gate of the gods. The small folk were in the streets. They called his name. They called him Lord Snow and Lord Targaryen and Lord Stark and Prince and JON. He did not raise his hand. He rode past them with his head a little bowed, not in shame but in a kind of attention. He wanted to hear what they called him. He did not answer. At the city gate, Tyrion was waiting. "I told you I would not see you off. I know you did. I lied. I thought you might." Tyrion looked up at him. The morning sun was on the little man's face and it showed every line, and the lines were many. "Jon. Yes, write me. I will, not about the grain prices. No. Though they will some weeks be what I have. Fine, the grain prices and everything else. Yes, you are. I have not been a friend to many. You were one. You know that. I do. Then go." Yes. They did not embrace. They did not shake. Tyrion patted his horse's flank firmly, and the horse, which had spent many weeks in the company of the Queen's hand and had developed an opinion of him, huffed affectionately. Jon nodded once and put his heels in, and they rode. The road north was long. He did not hurry it. He stopped at villages. He slept in taverns when there were taverns and under his cloak when there were not. He heard, on the way, of the melting of the throne. He heard of a smith named Gendry who had been given the commission, and had been working at it for 2 full weeks, and had, at the end of it, made a pair of great iron doors for the entry to the Red Keep. A round iron chandelier for the hall that had been the throne room and was now the council's round chamber, and a simple chain of iron links that the Queen would wear over her plain wool, a chain of 1,200 small links, one for each blade. The small folk on the road told him about this chain. They liked it. They told it to him like a story. He came to Winterfell in the first days of the true spring. Sansa was on the steps. She had not known which day. She had only known it would be a day. She stood in a green wool that had been made for her new to mark the season, and her hair was down, and her arms were folded. Jon dismounted. He did not walk to her quickly. He walked to her the way he had walked the streets of King's Landing. She waited. When he reached her, she did not throw herself at him. She put her hand on his cheek, and he put his hand over her hand, and for a moment they stood like that. "You look tired," she said. "I am tired. I have soup." "Good." He went in. He ate her soup. He did not speak much that day. He spoke more the next. He spoke a great deal by the 3rd day, and by the 4th he had taken up his old habit of walking the battlements at dawn, and Ghost had taken up his old habit of watching from the courtyard. Bran was in the godswood every morning. He did not call for Jon. Jon came to him of his own accord. They sat together under the weirwood in the early hours before the staff was up. They did not speak, mostly. They listened. "Bran, Jon, you knew even at the council. You could have told them yourself. I would not have said it as well as you said it. That is not why. No." Bran's voice was quiet. "I did not want to take from you the thing you would say to them. If I had said it, it would have been a greenseer saying it. If you said it, it was a man saying it. The realm needed a man to say it. Greenseers are not the same as men. They can be mistaken for each other for a while, but after a while they must stop being. Bran." "Yes. How long will you be here? A while, not forever. Will you be all right?" Bran looked at him with those clear winter eyes, and for the first time in a year something very like a boy's smile moved his mouth. "I do not know, Jon. I am trying. That is all any of us are. I know." One morning before the spring had quite settled, Jon went out to the godswood alone. Ghost was with him. A raven had come in that morning with a letter from the south, from Tyrion, who had, as he had promised, been writing about the grain prices and also about other things, and Jon had left the letter on his desk and come out. The weirwood was putting out new growth. The old leaves had kept their red. The new leaves above them were coming in orange. The heart tree's carved face was as it had always been, weeping slow tears of red sap from the hollows of its eyes. He stood in front of it. He put his hand on the bark. He had an old question. He had asked it into the air 3 weeks ago by the lantern light, and he had received no answer because the answer had not been ready then. He asked it now. "Am I mine?" A raven came. It came from very high up, and it settled on the weirwood's top branch, and it opened one eye. He heard Bran's voice. He heard it in the way of the greenseer, which was not a voice in the air, but a voice inside his listening. "You carry fire in your blood, Jon Snow. You did not let it consume you. That is what makes you our brother. No man is only the blood he came from. You are more. You have made yourself more. Go, be what you have made." The raven closed its eye. Ghost, beside him, pushed his head into his hand. Jon did not weep. He did not need to. He stood a long time in the godswood with his hand on the bark, and he felt, not peace exactly, but the quiet of a man who has been listening carefully and has heard himself answered. And then he let his hand fall. He walked out. Behind him, in the cold spring air, a single red leaf fell from the weirwood's branch. It turned once in the wind. It came to rest in the water of the black pool. It floated there a while. It sank. Snow began, out of nowhere, in a soft, thin fall that no one had predicted. It came down over Winterfell in the way snow comes in the spring, almost shy, and it did not stick. It melted on the hot stones and on the backs of the direwolf's shoulders and in the weirwood's cupped palms. Jon went into the keep to write his letter back. He wrote to Targaryen about the grain prices. He wrote to Targaryen about the wildlings in the valley of the Nightfort. He wrote to Targaryen about a problem with a lord in the Rills who wanted to change his tenancies, and about a dispute over fishing in the White Knife. He wrote to Targaryen about nothing very important. He wrote to Targaryen about nothing in the end, the way two friends write, about what they were doing that day. At the end he wrote, "The coin is still in my pocket. I spin it. It keeps landing the same way. I begin to think, Targaryen, that I have been wrong about what kind of coin I have." He sealed the letter with wax. He sent it south. Then he went down to the hall for dinner. His sister was there. His brother was there in his chair. His men were there, and the free folk who had come down to visit, and a scrawny boy with a new sword who was learning what it was to stand in a Stark hall. The fire was going. The soup was hot. There was bread.